we'll see plenty of brighter interludes. Feeling a little cooler in the west though, particularly as we start to see the breeze pick up through the course of the day. And quite a damp start to the day across Wales, parts of Devon and Cornwall, but any rain eventually breaking up, potentially to see some showers into the afternoon. But many seeing a mostly dry afternoon, still plenty of cloud though, particularly across central and southern parts. But it's likely we'll see plenty of showers, particularly across western areas of Scotland, where it will start to turn quite blustery into the afternoon. But in sheltered spots, in any sunshine, it will feel pleasant. Highs around 23 to 24 degrees Celsius. Now, later into the afternoon through into the evening, we will start to see those winds really strengthen, particularly around exposed coasts of Scotland. A chance we'll start to see some gales as the night progresses, a mix of clear spells, but also plenty of blustery showers. Most showers easing away across Northern Ireland, but once again around coastal areas, those winds are really going to pick up. And elsewhere across England and Wales, still a mix of clouds, some brighter spells to end the day, but still plenty of cloud across southern counties, a risk of showers here too. Otherwise, for many, it should be a mostly dry night, a little milder compared to the night just gone, but turning really blustery across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland, some thicker areas of cloud moving into the west and far north of Scotland with some light outbreaks of rain during the morning. But as I say, for many it should be a mostly dry night and feeling fairly mild by the time you reach the morning too. And we'll see a little bit of a north-south split in the weather to end the week. Once again, a much brighter start, particularly across Wales, parts of the southwest compared to this morning. And the dry weather sticking around, plenty of spells of sunshine as we head into the afternoon. But across Scotland, Northern Ireland, parts of northern England, a real blustery day ahead with some quite heavy outbreaks of rain at times across northern parts of Scotland. But warm in the sunshine, particularly across the southeast, highs reaching around 25 degrees Celsius.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Let us take on some of your financial stresses and pay your mortgage or rent for the next 12 months. We want to give you a cash lump sum equivalent to 12 of your monthly mortgage or rent payments, up to an unbelievable £20,000. We'll also boost that by a further £5,000, so you really could have some fun in the coming year. For a chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB15 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 29th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m, only on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 12 o'clock on Thursday, the 7th of August. I'm Tom Harwood, and Emily Carver is on her way in. I can assure you she's currently having a baby scan appointment.
Hi Tom, hi everyone at home. I'm sorry I'm going to miss the top of the show today. I've got a very quick baby scan to go to, but I'll be back as quickly as I can to the studio, so hopefully I won't miss too much.
See Emily very soon indeed. But in the meantime, will the Bank of England cut interest rates or hold firm? The decision's due in the next minute or so. Elsewhere, the first illegal Channel migrants have now been detained under Labour's New Deal with France. The Home Secretary had this to say.
No one should be making this journey in the first place, and that's why this is now starting the process to return people and to undermine this vile trade in people.
And you can see there the Border Force vessel Typhoon just coming into Dover Harbour with the latest batch of small boat migrants who didn't get Yvette Cooper's memo.
And a Kremlin aide confirms that Vladimir Putin and President Trump will meet in person next week to discuss ending the Ukraine war. But will Trump actually lay down the law? Good afternoon, Britain. Breaking news for you. As was expected by the markets, the Bank of England has lowered the base rate, those interest rates, from 4.25% to 4%. That's its fifth cut since last August, and it takes the base rate to the lowest since March 2023. But it must be said, this was a knife-edge decision. The Monetary Policy Committee voted by 5 votes to 4 for this cut. What will it mean for the economy? Well, joining us now is the City editor at City AM, Simon Hunt. Simon, the bank did what most were expecting, but perhaps by a bit of a narrower margin than many thought.
Absolutely, yes. So we've just had that decision in the last few seconds that the Bank of England's Monetary Policy Committee has decided to cut interest rates by 25 basis points, by a quarter point to 4%. As you said, that's something that most markets analysts had predicted. So in that respect, it's not much of a surprise. But as you say, a pretty knife-edge decision, but by no means a complete consensus on the committee. And that sort of throws into question when we'll get the next rate cut, because there is a bit of a split among analysts, it's probably fair to say, as to whether or not we'll get one more cut by the end of the year. There was an expectation we might, now that today's vote was so split, maybe people will start to think actually that will be the end of rate cuts for 2025.
Now, we know that the Bank of England base rate is a tool that they use to combat inflation. And unfortunately, inflation has been going up in recent months. It's hit a new high of 3.6% not so long ago. But at the same time, economic growth has been on the floor. Generally, cutting interest rates encourages economic growth, but raising them combats inflation. It's such a difficult decision for the bank when we have both high inflation, much higher than we would like, but also much lower growth. I suppose that would go a long way to explain why the Monetary Policy Committee was so split.
Yeah, it's a very tough call they face. I mean, as you know, the Bank of England has a target to keep inflation at or around 2%. It hasn't met that target for several years now, and it's been under pressure as to why it hasn't been able to keep inflation on target. Of course, the current inflation rate of 3.6% isn't anywhere near the kind of heights we saw in 2023 when it was up above 10%, but it's still too high from the bank's perspective. But as you say, we have pretty stagnant growth right now, so any levers the bank can pull to stimulate that is good. There's also the question as to how much effect the bank can really have on rates of inflation in the UK when so much of it comes from external economic pressures over which they have no control.
It's such a difficult issue because it's not just about the level at which growth is sat at and at which inflation is. It's also about the trend. And of course, inflation was down around 2% at the time of the general election last year. That was, what, 12 or 13 months ago. 14 months ago now, perhaps, we're in August. But now what we're seeing is that inflation has trended upwards. And in the same breath, GDP growth, the expectations of that growth have trended downwards for a whole host of reasons. After Rachel Reeves's budget, after Donald Trump's tariffs, all sorts of things. But because both of those trends are going in precisely the opposite direction from which the bank and the government would like them to go, it's a rock and a hard place.
Absolutely, yeah. It's not really a set of data that any government or indeed any central bank would be particularly interested in having, but those are the data they have. I think the other point to make is that there is an expectation there'll be more cuts in the next year. There's analysts think that interest rates will probably settle at around 3.5% at some point next year. But the era of low interest rates is gone. I mean, there's an expectation that rates will stay around that level for quite a long time. So the era of cheap borrowing, cheap government debt, low interest rate repayments, that's kind of gone now.
Well, as someone who's going to renegotiate my mortgage next year, that's perhaps not the happiest news in the world, but there'll be lots of savers. There'll be lots of people with savings in their bank accounts who will think, actually, a higher interest rate is pretty good for them.
Yeah. I mean, it's these kinds of effects have a pretty marginal effects for savers. I mean, often banks, high street banks, will price these things and before they take place. But certainly, good news for people looking to get on the housing ladder, people looking to refinance their mortgage. There are still some cuts projected to happen over the next few months, so things will get slightly better, bit of a rosier picture for them.
OK, so just finally, this is what we're expecting to be on track now for a more steady few rate cuts, a return perhaps to normality in the economy, or a greater sense of normality despite these incredibly strong headwinds and, frankly, the fact of very little growth in this country.
Yeah, very little growth. And of course, part of the uncertainty is, all of the global tariff changes that we're seeing right now that was brought about by Donald Trump. So I think central banks everywhere are being cautious. They're not, the period of consistent consecutive rate cuts is gone, and a lot of central banks are just in a sort of wait and see mode to see where tariffs and trade wars will settle.
I suppose that explains the split decision there, 5-4. Perhaps no one knows what they're doing in this current economy. But Simon Hunt, City Editor at City AM, really appreciate your time reacting to that breaking news there from the Bank of England. Now, earlier today, the first Channel migrants were detained under the terms of the United Kingdom's returns deal with France. The government's saying there will be a return to France in the coming weeks. Now, the Home Secretary hailed the deal as groundbreaking, adding the government is on track to do what no other government has done since this crisis started. However, of course, critics claim it will do little to stem the flow of illegal boat crossings, which have hit record levels this year. So here's what the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, had to say just a few minutes after the news of those first detentions was confirmed.
Well, the pilot has now begun, and the first migrants who arrived on small boat are now in detention. That is the first step to removing them to France, because no one should be making this journey in the first place, and that's why this is now starting the process to return people and to undermine this vile trade in people. We won't provide operational details at this point that criminal gangs can simply use and exploit. But no one should be in any doubt. Anyone who arrives from now on is eligible for immediate detention and return. And this pilot will now build, because we are determined that no one should be making this journey.
Interesting stuff there, some general words, but we're still yet to hear specifics about numbers. So let's try and make some sense with this, with our Home and Security Editor, Mark White, live in Dover. Mark, clearly we're looking at some boats here, new arrivals coming in even now.
Yeah, I'm just staying out of vision so that you can see the images there from the Border Force vessel Typhoon. with the first of those on board that vessel about to come up the gangway shortly, I think. Border Force officers have boarded the vessel. There seems to be a slight delay. There can sometimes be the odd issue with some of the migrants before they bring them out up the gangway and down into the processing centre. Now, looking at the boat, as our team here are doing through the long end of their lanes, it's not packed out, so we're not expecting north of 80 that we've seen in recent days, but there'll certainly be a few dozen, 4 dozen maybe, on board this particular vessel. And the reason for the slightly lower numbers today is because the wind is now really starting to pick up in the channel again. We only had a short window yesterday and into this morning where the channel was passable for these small boats. It'll improve again at the weekend, but for the time being, that's about it. There is another migrant boat, we're told, that's just made the line, just reached UK waters, and the Border Force vessel Hurricane has arrived on scene now to take over from that French patrol and to pick up the migrants basically and take them here to Dover Harbour. So if all those are counted as we expect by mid-afternoon, we're expecting around about 350 at least will have crossed since this deal came into operation yesterday. So you can see, Tom, that when we're talking about very modest numbers of migrants who will be sent back as part of this returns deal, the numbers that have been put out there and not denied by the government are about 50 a week in the initial stages. Well, you can see just in the space of this 24 hours of arrivals, we've got 350. And then that doesn't count for the days ahead when the weather will improve again and many hundreds more will cross the English Channel.
So, Mark, just 1/7 of those who have arrived in the last 24 hours makes up this week's reported quota of returns. 1/7 of one 24-hour period, and that 50 number is full. I mean, that is just the most extraordinary perspective there. Do you think that's why the Home Secretary was so reluctant to give figures herself, talking in the sort of vaguality about how this scheme hopefully will ramp up in the future, but giving no specifics whatsoever?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. That's why she's being so coy. One, she wants to be able or not to give the kind of information out that would potentially tip off people smugglers to exactly what they have to contend with in terms of the percentage chance that people coming across will be returned. And also she doesn't want the embarrassment of saying, OK, we've put together 40 or 50 of those who came across yesterday and we'll be returning them, only to find out after the human rights lawyers, the NGOs and other activist groups have worked their magic, as they always do now. They are supremely talented at being able to work their way around the Human Rights Act to ensure the best possible outcome for those they're representing. They don't want the embarrassment of having said 40 or 50 are being returned, only to tell us in a few weeks' time that because of various appeal processes, that's down to half a dozen or less. So that's probably another reason. They are telling us that we will get updates on the numbers that they return. But, you know, they've said regular updates, but what do they mean by that? Every 6 months? You know, I guess they'll be hoping that if it is, you know, 6 months' time, just the uncertainty over this might make a difference, might have some kind of impact on the people smugglers, combined with the other elements such as tougher policing, they claim, on the other side of the channel, all taken in the round, they believe could have an effect.
Well, Mark, do stay there. Do count as many as you can, and do let us know later on in the programme if there is a difference today compared to previous days, now that this detention is reportedly taking place. Mark White there, live in Dover. Well, to tell us more is our political correspondent, Catherine Forster, live in the studio with us. Catherine, the government is riding a lot on this scheme. Yes, it really is, because it does know that people are beyond furious, out of patience. We look at the demonstrations at asylum hotels. The government promised to smash the gangs. A year on, the numbers are up 50%, arriving at 800 a week. So if they don't get a grip of this, they are likely to be punished, just the same as the last government were, the Tories. It was one of several major factors why people got rid of the Conservatives, the total inability to maintain our borders. And I thought it's quite interesting, the difference between the rhetoric that we're hearing from the government and the likely reality. So Keir Starmer this morning tweeting, saying no gimmicks, just results. If you break the law to enter this country, you will face being sent back. When I say I will stop at nothing to secure our borders, I mean it. Look, the government have made so many announcements of all the things they're doing to try to get a grip on this. At the moment, if you enter this country, you might face being sent back. If it's only going to be 50 out of 800 a week, you probably won't. So let's see. I mean, it is just a pilot. They've said they're going to ramp it up quickly, but we just don't know what the legal challenges will be. France can veto anybody. Let's see how it works in practice, if it does. And of course, the proof of the pudding will be when the numbers crossing start to fall. And do we have a long way off? Any indication of when the government will start telling us some concrete figures? I think what Mark was saying there probably rings very true. They don't want to say it at this early stage in case there are a huge number of human rights claims and those numbers aren't even the 50 that was earlier reported. I think exactly, they don't want to give numbers because then they'll be held to account for them. And if it is only 50 is what we imagine, straight away you can say, well, that's not going to do it. They say their reason for not giving numbers is that they don't want to help the people smugglers. That is... I can think of a number that would help the people smugglers, 100%, or at least not help the people smugglers. Indeed. If they could be categorical, it would really disadvantage the people smugglers. Indeed, and we don't even know, sure, they are detaining people now, but we don't know how many. We don't know when some of these will actually be physically removed to France, let alone what France is going to do with them when they get there. Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, has said within a matter of weeks. They have talked about transparency. They will say we'll get all this information, but how long we might wait for this, we don't know. And bear in mind, the whole thing can be suspended at a week's notice or scrapped at a month's notice. So at the moment, France is cooperating, but it could all go up in smoke at any minute. Does it feel in some ways that France has the whip hand in this relationship? Well, they absolutely do, haven't they? I mean, we've paid France hundreds of millions. How many times have we had announcements of groundbreaking deals with the French and how they're cracking down, and the Prime Minister has been on trips here, there and everywhere. And yet we see the pictures of the French police on the beach, just standing arms folded as these taxi boats come along. Now, there is a deal with France that is coming into effect, that they can go into shallow water. But look, there's a lot of violence in these camps. And if you were in France, would you want all these migrants here on your shores who don't want to be there? So they certainly have got the upper hand. But then, of course, what choice do we have? And also worth saying that this is an issue that the whole of Europe is struggling with. It's certainly not just us, although countries like Greece are taking a much, much tougher approach. Well, Catherine Forster, thanks for that latest analysis. We'll be back with you, of course, later in the programme. But it's time for royal news now. Yes, this royal row rumbles on as it's been revealed that Centre Barley, the charity, may face further action against Prince Harry in that ongoing dispute over allegations of bullying and even misogyny. Well, let's get the very latest with our royal correspondent, Cameron Walker. Cameron, what's going on?
Yes, well, do you remember, Tom, I was sat here yesterday saying the main criticism of the UK charity watch watchdog towards Prince Harry, Centre Barley and the chair was that they're allowing this row to play out in public. What's happened this morning? They're continuing this row in public. So what has basically happened is a source has told us close to Centre Barley that they are considering taking further action against Prince Harry over these bullying and misogyny allegations, something Prince Harry has always denied. If you remember, the Charity Commission's report said that they found no evidence of widespread bullying, harassment and misogyny at the charity, but it's not actually within their remit to investigate individual allegations of bullying, something which the chair has accused Prince Harry of. As I said, he's always denied that. His spokesperson, following the Charity Commission's report, came out and said, well, this clears Prince Harry of any wrongdoing. And it appears this morning Centre Barley is taking umbrage with that point, saying it is entirely wrong for Prince Harry and his spokespeople to suggest that is the point. And we put this to Prince Harry's team, and the source close to the former Board of Trustees, who obviously resigned en masse following this public row, said in quite strongly worded terms, Tom, it's remarkable. Just yesterday, Miss Chandauka, who's the chairperson, was applauding the Charity Commission's findings, yet today, after a flurry of unflattering headlines, she's back on the warpath. Issuing yet another media statement only reinforces the Commission's criticism about using the press to air internal disputes, rehashing unsubstantiated allegations of bullying, misogyny and more, which the Commission found no evidence of, and dressing them up as veiled threats isn't just provocative, it's pitiful. Ms Chandauka has if she has genuine concerns, she should spell them out plainly, or better yet, redirect her energy towards something truly worthwhile, like raising money for the children of Centre Barley, Centre Barley exist to support. And the Charity Commission echoes part of that statement, actually, telling me this morning that we now urge all involved to put their differences behind them and allow the charity to focus on its work and beneficiaries, because that's the problem, Tom. It's such a distraction from what Centre Barley does.
Well, I mean, they're behaving like children. Yeah. They're throwing insults at each other. I mean, from Prince Harry's camp, they're saying that this Chambuka woman is doing a power grab and is trying to take over the charity and make it an American thing and all the rest of it. But then from her perspective, she's saying that Harry is a bully and a misogynist. I mean, this is playground stuff.
It is playground stuff. I mean, one source told me that Prince Harry is throwing his toys out of the pram. I don't think his team would put it quite that way. I think it's clear that Prince Harry feels like he's been hard done by here. But what it does do is shift focus away from what Centre Barley does, helping children in Southern Africa suffering from HIV, AIDS and mental health problems and all the rest of it. And it's a shame, really, because Prince Harry didn't have much left when he stood back as a working member of the royal family. It was the Invictus Games, it was Centre Barley, it was Halo Trust, and he's kind of lost this pillar of Centre Barley. He's lost one of his main purposes. He co-founded the charity in honour of his mother back in 2006, and he's kind of walked away from the charity rather than try to resolve these disputes internally without it spilling out into the public domain. He would argue that that is Dr. Chandauka's fault, that it spilled out into the public domain. She obviously blames him. It's a complete mess, Tom, and as you say, quite childish playground politics.
Well, Cameron Walker, thanks indeed for bringing us all the latest on that. It's a sad state of affairs, really. But perhaps here's something to cheer you up. Yes, it's your chance to live mortgage or rent-free for an entire year and get a bonus of £5,000 in your bank in the latest Great British Giveaway. And guess what? If you've got a mortgage already paid off or no rent to pay at all, well, you can still enter and win £15,000. Here's what you need to know.
This is your chance to live mortgage or rent-free for an entire year in the latest Great British Giveaway. That's right, we'll give you a cash lump sum that will cover 12 of your monthly mortgage or rent payments, up to an incredible £20,000. Plus, we'll add £5,000 on top of that for you to treat yourself. And if you don't have a mortgage or rent to pay, lucky you, we'll give you £15,000 in cash instead. You have to hurry though, as lines will close on the 29th of August. For a chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB15 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 29th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Despite what Donald Trump's saying about ceasefires and whatever, reports have been coming out overnight about continuing missile attacks.
Well, British expat David Mason was caught up in those missile attacks on Friday when he and his son barely escaped with their lives after an Iranian missile exploded next to them in a bombing raid in northern Israel.
Let's speak to David, because David joins us now from his hospital bed, actually, to tell us about this terrifying ordeal. David, how are you?
I'm alive. I'm alive. That's one thing. Yeah. I'm alive.
How bad was it? A close call, was it?
It was very close. The missile hit about 25 feet away from us.
God.
It blew me completely. That's basically off my feet, and it was just dark and just blood everywhere, basically. I landed. As I woke up, there was a body. I was on top of a body which I thought was my son. And as I cleared all the debris away, I looked up and realized my son was standing there with a hole basically in his neck, shot. And, I basically went into father mode, as my other children said, dad mode. Took my shirt off, wrapped it around his neck to make sure that he wasn't bleeding more. And then he turned to me and said, "But Dad, you're splurting blood from everywhere. My arms, my back, my head." And I said, "Don't worry about me."
GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m, only on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 27 minutes past midday. My name's Tom Harwood, and Emily Carver is rushing back from her maternity appointment. She'll be with us very, very soon indeed. But now, should we feel guilty for being British? Well, His Majesty's Revenue and Customs has sparked a backlash after holding a seminar entitled The Guilt of Being British. This during office hours, despite hundreds of thousands of calls from taxpayers going unanswered every single month. Well, the Conservative Party leader Kemi Badenoch is one of those who have criticised the seminar, challenging Whitehall aides to leave the service if they're not proud of the United Kingdom. Well, are you proud to be British, or are you ashamed? Joining me is to debate this are the political commentator Kane Blackwell and the writer and activist Femi Nylander. Femi, we're going to start with you. What's this sort of seminar about?
I mean, I don't know this particular kind of ins and outs of the seminar itself, but I do think that it's very clear that if you're talking about being British, right, having a British passport, that's one thing. If you're talking about history, you're talking about culture, you're talking about this, that, and the rest, it's very clear that you have to be consistent. Either you can be proud and guilty about aspects, or you can't. You're not Isaac Newton. I don't know what you got at your physics GCSE, but I'm pretty sure you probably don't understand half of his theories. You probably don't understand what he's talking about a lot of the time. I certainly don't. So for me to say I'm proud of what he did, well, I'm not. It's not an achievement of mine. In the same way, a lot of British people, they'll say, well, I didn't do the slave trade. Okay, well, if you want to go down that route of you didn't personally do it and therefore you shouldn't personally feel guilt, then you have to be consistent and say, well, you didn't personally do it, and therefore there's no reason to be proud. Either you can be proud of certain things about British history and therefore British history is a part of you, in which case you have to be ashamed of certain things about British history as well. And when you see little kids starving to death at the moment in Gaza, and you think about the fact that Britain did the same thing in Bengal in India and starved millions of people to death, that is something that you should necessarily understand. And as I say, if you feel proud about certain aspects of British history, think, well, maybe I should feel guilty as well. Or you're consistent and you said, well, I had nothing to do with either of these things. I'm not Isaac Newton. I'm also not Winston Churchill. And therefore, I personally shouldn't feel proud or guilty of either. But I should understand history and understand how it relates to the present and understand why it might have something to do with where we are today.
Strong opening gambit, Femi Nylander. Let's throw that all over to Kane Blackwell. Kane, you can't have your cake and eat it.
Well, I think I am going to eat my cake, and I do think it is important that we acknowledge historical, problems and historical wrongs that took place. Of course, we should. That's history. Every country has had historical wrongs, either done to them or they have done to others. That is history. It's part of life, and it isn't great. But we have done some incredible things as a country, and we've produced incredible people like Isaac Newton, like Winston Churchill, and others. And the British people should be proud of who they are, their ancestors as well. It was our grandparents and great-grandparents who were under the siege of the Nazis and stood alone in Europe, while others didn't. We stood alone, and we should be proud of what we are, who we stand for, what we believe in. We produce parliamentary democracy. That's why our parliament is called the mother of all parliaments. We should be proud of being British. We've produced some incredible things. Individuals, yes, but we're all part of the British story. And it doesn't matter who you are, where you come from. It's about being proud of the country that you are in and that you're a part of. And that's what we should be remembering. It isn't about, oh, this person did this and this person did that. We should all be proud of who we are, our flag, our country, and our nation.
Femi, is the difficulty in your argument that the entire history of the world, well, it was once described as nasty, brutish and short. Every culture has tried to do some really terrible things to other cultures. War was sort of the natural state of the world for thousands of years. Is it then slightly overzealous to say there is somehow a unique guilt in being British just because for a period of 150 years Britain was top country, the most successful country in the world, so we got to see that play out across the world? I mean, had any other country had as large a reach as Britain, and some did almost have as large a reach as Britain, far greater horrors ensued.
Well, again, I mean, you can quote Thomas Hobbes all you like, but at the end of the day, the idea, for example, that Britain stood alone in Europe, I mean, the Russians had a massive role to play in defeating the Nazis.
Not for the first 2 years, Femi. For the first 2 years, there was the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, the Nazi-Soviet Pact.
And then how many, yes, after that, what happened? I mean, Winston Churchill also expressed sympathy for Nazis at one point. I mean, the Nazis, like the royal family in the United Kingdom went to visit the Germans, and there's photos of them doing Nazi salutes. Europe, for a long time, dabbled with fascism, and that's not, and Europe, and again, a lot of the Nazis' own policies were based on the ideas of eugenics developed in Britain. Like Hitler praised people like Francis Dalton, who developed the theories of eugenics.
The socialist movement did, the Fabians, all of the rest of it, that did promote eugenics in the United Kingdom.
Just socialists. I mean, I'm talking about UCL and Francis. No, it wasn't. Francis Galton was a UCL academic who had nothing to do with any kind of academic political party. He was an academic at UCL who came up with the fundamental academic bases for the theory of eugenics, which was then implemented in Germany in Namibia, and also implemented in Germany in the Holocaust, and also implemented by Britain, and also implemented by Britain, as I say, by people like Winston Churchill. When you look at the Bengal famine and the idea that the Indians are breeding like rabbits and the famine is their own fault, whilst we're exporting grain out of India and basically exacerbating famine.
That is
so again,
disputed.
These are things which we need to. Well, it's not. It's a matter of the historical record.
It's a matter of record that there was a famine, but of course there were lots of famines before industrialisation.
The quote, "The Indians are breeding like rabbits," is well documented, and you can say it's disputed, but anyone can go and Google it and look at the sources from where that quote comes. The fact that Winston Churchill again exported grain out of India at the time is also well documented. So when you see those images of starving children in Gaza, there's a historical precedent to this.
Shall we bring Kane Blackwell in now? Because, of course, as Femi has pointed out, there are examples of where it would be pretty nasty to live under the British Empire. And sure, it may well have been nastier to live in Leopold II's Congo, but just because other countries were worse doesn't mean that Britain didn't do bad things.
Of course. No one's denying that Britain didn't have a role to play in some very dark situations in the world. No one's denying it. But I believe that our good has outweighed our bad. We have done so much to give the world. We gave the world railways. We gave the world, like I say, democracy, free speech. All of these things are so important, and they're part of who we are. Now, I don't see why we always have to denigrate ourselves and always feel really bad about everything that's happened in the past. We can feel good, we can feel proud, while looking back and also saying, yes, there were historical wrongs that took place. We acknowledge that, we're not denying it, but we are now saying that we as Britain are important. We have done some incredible things in the world. We're not called Great Britain for nothing, and we should remember that. And the fact that HMRC, bringing this back to the original story, the HMRC are allowing their workers on office time to take part in this seminar is a smack in the face to British taxpayers, and it is totally, totally wrong. We need, the woke mind virus has infected Whitehall, and we need a Trump-style revolution in terms of DEI being swept away to actually take hold of this country now, because we've seen it in the US. What has happened? The institutions in the US have taken it away. Now we're seeing business. Now we're seeing ads. Now we're seeing the whole culture change, and it all comes from government. And this is where we need a huge culture shift and be proud of who we are as Britons. That's
well, Femi Nylander, we started with you. Kane Blackwell, we ended with you. Thank you both, gentlemen, for joining us here in that sparky debate. Well, we should say in a response, HMRC has issued the following statement. Events by staff networks should not be taken as reflecting the views of HMRC. An event like this would only be attended by 0.1% of staff, which would have no impact on our ability to staff our helplines. We have robust procedures in place to ensure our phone lines are well resourced throughout the day. Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Plenty more to come. Indeed, should a council leader give himself a pay rise while facing a £3.6 million budget shortfall? That's to come after your latest news headlines.
Good afternoon. The headlines at 12:30. The Bank of England has cut its base interest rate today. The bank's Monetary Policy Committee has reduced the base rate by 0.25 percentage points from 4.25% to 4%. The government has detained the first illegal Channel migrants under the deal with France. The number of illegal arrivals since the new UK-France returns deal came into operation is now at 301. The Home Secretary
is the first step to removing them to France, because no one should be making this journey in the first place, and that's why this is now starting the process to return people and to undermine this vile trade in people.
A Kremlin aide has confirmed the US president will be meeting the Russian President Putin in the coming days, and the venues to be decided and announced later today. The US president is seeking a three-way peace deal with Russia and Ukraine to finally bring an end to the war. A record number of 18-year-olds are likely to get into their first choice of university this year, even if they narrowly miss their grades. And those are the headlines for now. More in half an hour.
Take the GB News family with you on any device. As long as you have an internet connection, tune into GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 37 minutes past midday, and I've got to say, delighting news. Emily's back.
I'm terribly sorry I'm so late, Tom. Do you have space for me?
I think we can muster some space for you. How was the scan?
Got my bag. The scan was fantastic.
Baby good?
The baby is doing very nicely indeed.
I'm sure everyone is actually very, very... I know lots of people write in all the time to sort of check up on bump on baby.
So you can have a view of the bump. Yes, it has grown quite a bit. It has grown a bit more than a food baby now.
Oh, yes. And remind everyone your due date.
September the 4th. So, yeah, put it in the diary.
It's a month diary.
Who knows? It might come earlier. It might
live
come
on GB
later.
No, that's not going to happen.
No, and there will be no camera in the delivery room either, Tom.
No, the production discussions we sometimes have do go down strange places.
Yes, you've got to have a plan, you know. If I go into Labour when Patrick's on in the evening, who knows? It could all happen.
It could all happen, but it will all happen on this programme as well. Not all that, but all the rest of the news. Because, of course, after the break, we'll ask whether a council leader should give himself a pay rise while facing a huge £3.6 million budget shortfall.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. It's been a rather drizzly start for some of us this morning, brightening up nicely this afternoon, leaving a day of sunny spells and showers, but you're really going to notice those winds strengthen across northern areas this evening. That's all thanks to this area of low pressure, dragging in some cloud and some outbreaks of rain, and notice a real squeeze on the isobars there, particularly across western Scotland. So a breezy day here, and winds will strengthen more and more as the day goes on. And then we'll see plenty of blustery showers moving eastwards across northern areas, in particular Scotland, Northern Ireland and northern and central parts of England. We'll see that cloud linger through much of the day across parts of the south. Still some drizzly outbreaks, particularly across Devon and Cornwall, but feeling warm in any brighter spells, highs reaching around 23 to 24 degrees Celsius. So a blustery end to the day across Scotland in particular. Western exposed coast, for example, there is a chance we'll start to see some gales later in the night. Still plenty of blustery showers moving through too. Still the chance of the odd shower, particularly around coastal areas of Northern Ireland and northern parts of England. Still, once again, could see 1 or 2 showers by the time we reach later into this afternoon. Any drizzle will eventually clear away across the south through into the evening, still leaving a remnants of cloud for a time before this clears away as we head towards dawn. And those showers are still set to continue, particularly across Scotland. And as I say, a risk of gales by the time we reach the early hours of the morning. So do take care if you're travelling during the early hours of Friday. But elsewhere, it should be mostly dry, and it's going to be particularly mild across the south. Some towns and cities not dropping past 15, maybe even 16 degrees Celsius. So a mild start, and it leads us into a warm day across much of England and Wales. Plenty of bright spells and even some sunshine by the time we reach the afternoon. But a very different story across Scotland. Strong winds continuing here and also outbreaks of rain. This at times could turn quite heavy and blustery. But where you see the sunshine, once again, a little warmer than this afternoon. Highs reaching 25 degrees Celsius.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from GBnews.com. The M8 westbound at junction 22 has restrictions due to a live lane breakdown. Road users should proceed with caution. In North Yorkshire on the A64 westbound, there's a collision between the junctions with the A1237 York South and the A659 Tadcaster East. One lane is closed. In Cambridgeshire, the A14 westbound at junction 20, Ellington faces delays due to a traffic incident, with one lane closed. And on the trains, Grand Central services are disrupted at London King's Cross, causing Great Northern train delays between London King's Cross and Alexandra Palace. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is coming up to 1:45. Now, the leader of cash-strapped Cambridge City Council, which council isn't cash-strapped these days? Well, he's awarded himself a 33% pay rise.
That's a bold move. Councillor Cameron Holloway, here he is. He'll now receive just over £31,000 a year, up from just £23,000 a year, despite the authority facing a £3.6 million budget gap.
Well, is this the wrong time? The council has defended the move, saying its leaders need fair remuneration, given they often work 60 hours a week. But one Conservative MP has criticised Councillor Holloway for being caught with his hand in the till.
And I believe we're now going to speak to that MP, Paul Holmes, the Shadow Housing and Local Government Minister. Paul, thank you very much for joining us. I mean, to be fair, he wasn't on a very large salary.
No, but I think this is about priorities. And if you look at some of the decisions that his administration has made, such as giving subsidies to illegal immigrants, that his councillor housing, and also the 4-day week that he's imposing, which is going to affect services for the people that he supposedly represents. I don't think a 55% pay rise at a time when services are being cut and we have that £3.6 million budget deficit, I don't think it's the right thing to do. And I'm sure that Councillor Holloway's constituents also won't think it's the right thing to do.
I mean, it is astonishing to learn that Cambridge City Council is in such grave debt, given it's one of the few cities in this country that is actually experiencing economic growth. I mean, there's a booming biotech centre there. There's a booming sort of industry off the back of the university in the modern technology-focused world. And yet the council is millions of pounds in the red. How on earth have they let it get to that state?
Well, its policies should really be surprised when Cambridge is a microcosm of some of the fiscal decisions that the Labour Party make, which is to tax people, cut services, and put ever-increasing burdens on constituents. We're seeing that in Cambridge, as I say, a 4-day week, which is being supported by the trade unions and planning departments, but people who want those services to perform efficiently aren't getting the outcome from those services. So I'm not entirely surprised. Cambridge City Council has had a lot of investment, as you've rightly outlined, Tom. National policy, there should be huge economic growth there, but it's a Labour council and it's the same old story, high taxes and inefficient public services, while, I hate to say it, but it's true, feathering their own nests, and we're seeing that nationally too.
And I can't imagine the average worker at the council has received such a bumper pay rise, or have they?
No, I don't think so. Look, as I said at the beginning in my answer, their policies and services are being cut. There's a £3.6 million budget deficit, which means that staff obviously aren't getting those pay rises. But there are political decisions that are baffling. £30,000 grants to organisations to provide gardening services for illegal immigrants. That's not right when we're looking at a £3.6 million budget deficit in this council. A 4-day week where people who are paying their council taxes, probably higher council taxes under a Labour council, are not getting the services that they expect. So this is about political priorities, and it's quite clear to the people of Cambridge that the political priorities of the leader of that council is to increase his own pay, give public money to asylum seekers who to garden and go and be at one with nature, and also go down to a 4-day week. So I think this is a nonsensical decision, and the people of Cambridge should rightly be angry in their council.
I think a lot of people can see the hypocrisy there. Absolutely no challenge to you on that. But
thank you very much,
do you not
Tom.
think it's a bit rich for a Member of Parliament who's recently had a pay rise, as all Members of Parliament have, to over £90,000 a year that you earn, as all your colleagues do, to then say a council leader who was on £23,000 a year, which is, to be fair, a shockingly low salary for someone who's in charge of a city council of one of the most important cities in the country. I mean, let's be fair, £23,000 a year for a council leader of Cambridge City Council is a very, very low salary. Surely it makes sense. Maybe not at this time, maybe not in the context that you're describing, but surely that is not a wage that a council leader should be on.
Well, there are two key things I'd say to that, Tom. The first, the difference between me and the difference between Councillor Holloway is that my salary is set by an independent pay review body, and so supposedly was Councillor Holloway's when just 3 months ago, the independent pay body that represents Cambridge City Council made a decision to put their salaries up by about £700 to £1,000. That was voted through by full council. This was a unilateral decision by the leadership, by the leader of Cambridge City Council, to put his salary up by 55% and backdate that until from last May.
Is it 55? Because the reports are saying 33%. 23 to 31 isn't 55. But it's a large percentage increase.
You can tell I'm not going to be Chancellor, but there's a large percentage increase. But, you know, so that he did that unilaterally and the Labour group supported that. There is also a key difference as well between my salary, I'm a full-time Member of Parliament, and a council leader. Now, council leaders across the country work incredibly hard, but they are allowances. They're not a salary. So I'm up for a discussion on council allowances, but it must be done in the round while looking at the context that you've described, Tom, to make sure that people are getting value for money. I would argue in Cambridge that they're not, through the political decisions that Councillor Holloway is making, but also the unilateral way in which he's done that after full council voted for an independent pay review. I just don't think that's on, and I think that we need a proper discussion about councillors' allowances, but the way in which this leader has done it, I think, is unfair to the people of Cambridge.
OK, well, Paul Holmes, thanks indeed for joining us, talking through that slightly peculiar timing for a bumper pay rise.
Yes, but again, not a salary as we know it, more an allowance feature.
Yeah.
So that's why it's perhaps lower than other salaries. Anyway, in response to this story, a spokesman for Cambridge City Council issued the following statement. Leaders at the City Council regularly work 60-plus hours a week without offering a level of remuneration comparable to the national living wage. The position of leader would be restricted to retirees and the independently wealthy, which limits opportunity for good candidates to put themselves forward.
Yeah, I can see the logic there. I just can't see the logic of them doing this at the same time that all of these benefits are being given to illegal immigrants. But perhaps you've got a different view, gbnews.com/your say. And in the meantime, let's check up on the travel weather.
I hope we haven't forgotten anything.
Travel insurance, I tick that box.
Yeah, but remember what you forgot last year.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Across northwest Africa and western parts of Iberia, another heat wave is set to continue this week. Temperatures pushing into the low 40s, particularly across inland areas. And with those high temperatures comes plenty of sunshine, particularly across Spain, parts of Italy and also parts of Greece. And those UV levels are set to be high, so do take care if you're heading out on holiday. And that weather is set to continue as we head over the weekend and into next week. That's it from me. Bye-bye.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m.
only on GB News.
You've read the headlines, you've heard what those in power have to say. How about now we actually get to the truth?
They would pay attention.
We go beyond the political theatre and tell you what's really going on behind the scenes. For a massive council tax hike, one of the biggest in the UK. Others follow their lines, but we go off script.
You sound like a broken record, you say that week after week.
Cutting through the narratives and giving you unique perspectives. That's Ben Leo tonight, Saturdays and Sundays from 9 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/your say. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/your say, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's just gone 10 to 1. Now, a talking parrot called Mango has helped bring down a major drugs gang following this viral video.
2 for 25.
So that's the parrot there, squawking the drug dealing phrase, 2 for 25. And it's all helped to bring down the gang, apparently.
Right, so this is selling drugs at 2, whatever the drugs were, for £25, presumably.
Yeah, so obviously I don't know what they're referring to there.
No.
But yes, that's clearly the cost of the drugs.
Well, we've got to say the bird was discovered when police raided homes in Blackpool, where officers seized large amounts of heroin and cocaine. And it was these videos that we're seeing here of Mango the parrot playing with money. And I think you can probably see some drugs there too. But also the phrases that the parrot was squawking that were drug-dealing phrases. I mean, just miraculous there. I suppose a lesson for drugs dealers the country over: don't get a parrot.
Don't mess with a parrot, no. And, yeah, apparently this gang was selling heroin, crack cocaine, ketamine, cannabis, the whole lot.
Wow.
So good job, Mango.
Absolutely. And this, of course, is part of the government's new scheme to train police parrots the country over. They'll be deplanted in every suspected drug dealer's house. This is Good Afternoon, Britain. Not really. Much more coming up after your weather forecast.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. It's been a rather drizzly start for some of us this morning, brightening up nicely this afternoon, leaving a day of sunny spells and showers. But you're really going to notice those winds strengthen across northern areas this evening. That's all thanks to this area of low pressure, dragging in some cloud and some outbreaks of rain. And notice a real squeeze on the isobars there, particularly across western Scotland. So a breezy day here, and winds will strengthen more and more as the day goes on. And then we'll see plenty of blustery showers moving eastwards across northern areas, in particular Scotland, Northern Ireland and northern and central parts of England. We'll see that cloud linger through much of the day across parts of the south. Still some drizzly outbreaks, particularly across Devon and Cornwall, but feeling warm and any brighter spells, highs reaching around 23 to 24 degrees Celsius. So a blustery end to the day across Scotland in particular. Western exposed coast, for example, there is a chance we'll start to see some gales later in the night. Still plenty of blustery showers moving through too. Still the chance of the odd shower, particularly on coastal areas of Northern Ireland and northern parts of England. Still, once again, could see 1 or 2 showers by the time we reach later into this afternoon. Any drizzle will eventually clear away across the south through into the evening, still leaving a remnants of cloud for a time before this clears away as we head towards dawn. And those showers are still set to continue, particularly across Scotland. And as I say, a risk of gales by the time we reach the early hours of the morning. So do take care if you're travelling during the early hours of Friday. But elsewhere, it should be mostly dry, and it's going to be particularly mild across the south. Some towns and cities not dropping past 15, maybe even 16 degrees Celsius. So a mild start, and it leads us into a warm day across much of England and Wales. Plenty of bright spells and even some sunshine by the time we reach the afternoon. But a very different story across Scotland. Strong winds continuing here and also outbreaks of rain. This at times could turn quite heavy and blustery. But where you see the sunshine, once again, a little warmer than this afternoon. Highs reaching 25 degrees Celsius.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
This is your chance to live mortgage or rent-free for an entire year. We'll give you a cash lump sum that will cover 12 of your monthly mortgage or rent payments, up to an incredible £20,000. Plus, we'll add £5,000 on top of that for you to treat yourself. You have to hurry though, as lines will close on the 29th of August. For a chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB15 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 29th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Farage, Monday to Thursday from 7 p.m.
Just a few weeks after reuniting with Black Sabbath and performing a farewell concert for fans. And I'm joined now by Alex Dyke, radio DJ, broadcaster, formerly of the BBC, who's going to pay a bit of a tribute, I think, to Ozzy Osbourne. Alex, welcome.
Thank you very much, Nigel. You know, Ozzy will probably be remembered as the guy who shouted "Sharon" at his wife in the Osbourne's reality TV show from the early 2000s. But there was so much more, Nigel, to Ozzy than that. He was a pioneer of heavy metal rock. And you've got to remember, in the very early 70s, the rock that was coming out of Britain after the Beatles had split up was progressive rock. It was self-indulgent 6-minute drum solos and things like that, you know, when you think back to early Genesis and Jethro Tull. But Ozzy wasn't that at all. He was a heavy metal pioneer and a heavy metal hero. He sold over 100 million albums with his band Black Sabbath, who fired him in... Nigel, did you know he was fired by Black Sabbath?
I didn't know that. For what reason?
He was fired, Nigel, because of his drug and drink problems. He was addicted. And when we do look back at him 20 years ago in the early noughties in the Osbournes, you could see then he was frail. His body was shot because he had abused his body so badly through drink and drugs. But Sharon Osbourne, of course, his wife, was his second wife. She was his manager, and he married her in the early 80s. And he came back as a solo star with a brilliant first album called Blizzard of Oz. Ozzy was all about showbiz.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Well, good afternoon, Britain. It's 1 o'clock on Thursday, the 7th of August. I'm Emily Carver.
And I'm Tom Harwood.
Well, yes, the first illegal Channel migrants have now been detained, apparently, under Labour's new deal with France. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper had this to say.
No one should be making this journey in the first place, and that's why this is now starting the process to return people and to undermine this vile trade in people.
And as expected, this afternoon, the Bank of England lowered the base rate from 4.25% to 4%. That's the 5th interest rate cut since last August, taking them back to the lowest levels since March 2023.
Elsewhere, a Kremlin aide confirms Vladimir Putin and President Trump will meet in person next week to discuss ending the war in Ukraine. But will Trump actually lay down the law?
Now, the Member of Parliament, Roshnara Ali, is facing criticism after reportedly hiking the rent on her property by £700 just weeks after evicting tenants, whilst serving as the minister responsible for homelessness.
And the leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch, she's revealed that she has lost her Christian faith. But does belief in God still matter for political leaders, or has Britain just left its Christian roots behind?
And the government is cracking down on unregulated beauty procedures amid concerns over unsafe Botox, fillers and cosmetic treatments.
And a council in Spain has banned Muslims from using public gyms and civic spaces to celebrate Muslim festivals, the first such move in the country. Is this about protecting local identity, or is it religious discrimination?
I mean, it's just staggering, isn't it? Roshnara Ali, the Minister for Homelessness, rents out property. She's a landlord to start with. Nothing wrong with being a landlord. Probably need to be pretty careful about how you do your landlording if you're a government minister.
For homelessness.
And yet, she kicked out the tenants And by the way, they've got complaints over the amount of money that they were going to be charged for a professional clean of the house and all this other stuff.
Paint jobs and things.
That then got wiped when they emailed back saying, isn't the landlord the Minister for Homelessness? And of course, a lot of this was legally dubious. You're not supposed to be able to charge tenants to have a professional clean and all the rest of it if there's normal wear and tear to the property.
Now, Labour have made a big thing about how they're going to crack down on rogue landlords, and that's why this is just so terrible. I mean, I would have thought that perhaps they wouldn't have appointed even a landlord as their Minister for Homelessness, considering that they're talking about rogue landlords being the primary reason for homelessness in this country. And I don't know how she defends herself on this one. So she argues, I believe, that they tried to sell the house.
Which is why the people had to move out.
They had to move out, which, OK, fair enough, she wants to sell the house, but then didn't manage to sell the house in quite a short time frame. A
very short time frame.
And then immediately put the rent up £700. So I think it was on for £3,300, then it went up to £4,000. And the tenants have spoken to the press, and they're furious about it, understandably.
Absolutely understandably. Well, what do you make of that one? gbnews.com/you'll say is the way to get involved on that, or all the other stories that we've got today.
Minister for Homelessness making people homeless.
Well, we don't know that they're home. They probably have found another house, but given the way the rental market is going, actually, maybe they haven't. Yeah, much more to discuss today, not least now arrests in Dover for the first time, detentions ahead of deportations. But how many have really taken place? That to come after your latest news headlines.
Tom, thank you, and good afternoon. The top stories. The Bank of England has cut its base interest rate. The bank's Monetary Policy Committee has reduced the base rate by 0.25 percentage points from 4.25% to 4% today. It marks the fifth reduction since August last year, when rates started steadily coming down from a peak of 5.25%. Chancellor Rachel Reeves hailed the cut as good news for house buyers and businesses borrowing to grow.
Interest rates have now come down 5 times since Labour came to office, in part because of the stability that we've managed to return to the economy after the chopping and changing, the mini-budget under the Conservatives and Liz Truss. And what that means, that fifth cut in interest rates, is that if you're taking out a mortgage for £215,000, you're going to be paying on a variable rate around £140 less a month than when we came to office just over a year ago. So this is good news for people wanting to get on the housing ladder, people remortgaging, and also businesses borrowing to grow.
Migrants who arrived in the UK after crossing the English Channel have been detained under the new one-in, one-out deal. A total now of 311 small boat migrants have arrived in the UK since the government's return deal with France was signed. The Home Office said they'll be held in immigration removal centres until they're returned to France. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper says it sends a message to every migrant thinking of making that illegal journey.
Well, the pilot has now begun, and the first migrants who arrived on small boat are now in detention. That is the first step to removing them to France, because no one should be making this journey in the first place, and that's why this is now starting the process to return people and to undermine this vile trade in people. We won't provide operational details at this point that criminal gangs can simply use and exploit. But no one should be in any doubt. Anyone who arrives from now on is eligible for immediate detention and return. And this pilot will now build, because we are determined that no one should be making this journey.
Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp spoke to GB News Breakfast.
I'm afraid it's got no chance of working, because we know that under this plan, only 6% of people crossing will get returned to France, 94% will get to stay in the UK. And obviously, if 94% can stay in the UK, that's no deterrent at all. But I did think yesterday, I'll go and check it out for myself. So I was on the Channel yesterday in a fishing boat. I went from Dover to Calais, had a look around the French coast. And actually, the weather was there was a bit of a swell because of the aftermath of the storm. So the conditions weren't great, but within half an hour of arriving off the French coast, we found 2 boats stuffed full of illegal migrants, almost entirely young men, I would add, about 150 of them in total in 2 boats. So they clearly hadn't been deterred at all.
In other news, the Kremlin-aide has this morning confirmed that the US president will be meeting the Russian president in the coming days, and a venue is to be decided and announced later today. The US president is seeking a three-way peace deal with Russia and Ukraine to finally bring an end to the war. It comes as Mr. Trump had set a deadline of tomorrow for Russia to come to a ceasefire agreement with Ukraine or face further sanctions. And finally, the war of words over Centre Barley continues, with the charity calling on the Charity Commission to provide clarity that its recent report did not specifically investigate claims of racism and misogyny against Prince Harry. Sources close to the Duke of Sussex claim they're rehashing unsubstantiated allegations of bullying, misogyny and more, describing their latest move as not just provocative, it's pitiful. The Charity Commission launched an investigation into Centre Barley, a charity Prince Harry co-founded in 2006 to support children in Southern Africa living with HIV and AIDS after a public row erupted between the chair and the trustees. The Charity Commission report stated that based on the evidence provided and reviewed by the Commission, it found no evidence or widespread of systemic bullying or harassment, including misogyny, at the charity. Those are the latest headlines. For now, more in half an hour.
My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
And here's a snapshot of the markets. The pound buying you $1.3422 and €1.1513. The price of gold, £2,520 and 50 pence per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is at 9,088 points.
My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 9 minutes past 1. Now, earlier today, the first Channel migrants were detained under the terms of the UK's returns deal with France, with the government saying they'll be returned to France in the coming weeks.
Yes, the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, hailed the deal as groundbreaking, adding that the government is on track to do what no other government has done since this crisis first started.
On the other side, however, critics do claim it will do little to stem the flow of illegal boat crossings, which, of course, have hit record levels this very year.
OK, well, let's get the thoughts now of former Labour Special Advisor Paul Richards. The government have been quite careful with their words. They haven't suggested that all of these people are going to be returned to France. They've said they face being sent back. Is that a clever use of words, because actually they don't know how many of these people are going to be heading back off to France?
I think that's fair. Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. They don't know how many, but they do know it's a pilot scheme and it's something that could be ramped up if successful. A lot of naysayers are saying, oh, it won't work, and I think some people even hoping it won't work just to prove the government wrong. But if it does work, and if we can return more people and persuade people not to come in the first place because of this scheme, then it can be rolled out and far more than it is now. If it's only 50 a week or whatever, well, that could be 500 or 5,000. So let's see, and let's hope it works.
Do you see some parallels between this scheme and another deportation scheme that was pursued by the previous government?
It's the R word you're about to mention.
I may have to mention the Rwanda word live on television. I know it hasn't been done before by literally anyone.
Yeah.
But of course, the Labour Party criticised that scheme, saying it would only send a handful of people back. It wouldn't be a real deterrent. It was a gimmick.
Yeah.
And now it seems that the parties have swapped clothes. Suddenly you have the Labour Party saying, oh, it's fine, even though it's a small number of people, it's going to ramp up, which is what the Tories said about Rwanda. And now the Tories are attacking this scheme as a gimmick. I mean, you've just swapped sides.
Well, for a start-off, the Rwanda scheme was already costing £700 million for 4 people returned. And even if it had worked, it would have returned a tiny handful on its own projection. So it didn't have that ability to ramp up in the same way.
The Tories
and
say
it cost
was
a lot of money.
But...
Well, it never got to work. It didn't deter anybody. It cost us all a lot of money as taxpayers, and it was the only thing they seemed to do. Don't forget, this scheme, the one-in, one-out scheme, is just one of the many multiple ways the government is trying to tackle this issue. Why? Because if there was a single simple thing you could do, any government of any stripe would have done it by now, because nobody wants to see these people arriving on our shores. So, you know, you've got to do lots of different things and see what works. But it's a pilot scheme which I think has a chance of success. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure a lot of our viewers and listeners would love nothing more than this scheme to actually work, but there are, of course, doubts. And this idea that they've detained all of these people sounds very, very tough. But people are technically detained when they arrive in Dover anyway for a time before they're then found accommodation elsewhere. So we don't really know if anything has actually changed as people arrive in Kent, as people arrive in Dover. It will really depend on how many people they get across to France. And Yvette Cooper won't tell us even a goal.
Well, I think people are now being returned, and I think it's, like I say, it's early days.
Oh, hang on, no one's been returned yet,
but I've
missed something.
They've been detained. Sorry, I misspoke. They have been detained, as you point out, and they will start to be returned. I can take Yvette's point about not giving away all the details there, because we are trying to fight this, cat and mouse battle with the smuggling gangs who we know will then change tactics every time we try and do something.
I think it's more about the French authorities. They can say,
well, they can do a lot more too.
Well, we're worried that this one's a bit of a wrong or we don't have enough detail on this one, we don't know about this one. They can effectively veto any of these guys going back.
I mean, again, as the partnership develops from the point where the gendarmes seem to be just standing there watching to a point where they're actually doing something more, I think we need to be more robust with the French. It's worked with the Belgian authorities, but with the French it doesn't seem to be quite as effective. And a part of this deal, as it evolves, as it works, should be making sure they do more on their side of the channel. I think that's legitimate. I think people would say, look, if they are standing by just watching these boats leave French shores, they should be doing far more.
One of the problems here, of course, is it's not just France we're dealing with.
No.
This scheme could not start until 12 hours ago or so because there was a delay. The European Commission had to OK it. There may well have been conditions attached to that. We know that Italy is not happy, Spain isn't happy, Greece isn't happy because they've got their own problems, don't want people to be flooding back. So, I mean, it could be the case that this scheme is not able to ramp up because of preclusions, thanks to the concerns of southern European countries.
Well, again, this is why it's a pilot, and if those blockages do emerge, then it's up to our government to overcome them. I mean, as you're right to say this is a global problem and it's a European-wide problem. It's not just our shores on which the migrants are arriving. Of course, it is all the southern part of Europe as well, and governments are facing the same big issues. But, the point of a pilot scheme is to see what works and where it doesn't work to improve it and to do it as part of a package of measures that, including closing down the hotels and all the rest of it, which will help to stem this tide.
Yeah, there's nothing to stop legal challenges, though.
Well, the legal blob, I think, have to be taken on too, actually. And that's another part of it. Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a danger now that the legal establishment is not necessarily reflecting the British public.
Well, it'll be a fascinating one.
You've said that about Rwanda, though, Paul?
No.
No, I didn't think so.
Well, Paul Richards, do stay with us for the moment. We'll be back with you in just a moment's time, because now Labour's homelessness minister, Rushnara Ali, evicted 4 tenants out of her East London townhouse before relisting the property for £700 more each month in rent.
Yes, the Labour MP has previously spoken out against private renters being exploited and empowering people to challenge unreasonable rent increases.
Well, surprisingly, the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government declined to comment on Ali's case, saying the government will level the playing field between landlords and tenants.
OK, we're joined by charity worker Nick Buckley, who's worked on the issue of homelessness for many years. Nick, thank you very much. I mean, this is not a good look, is it, from the homelessness minister to have evicted tenants and then up to the price of the rent?
You couldn't make this up if you wanted to. Out of all the ministers who could do this, it's the homeless minister. Now, homelessness is very complicated, but in this particular case, what's annoying all of us is the hypocrisy. So here is a government minister whose brief is to help the most vulnerable in society, rough sleepers, homeless people, people at risk of becoming homeless. And because she sees this property as a business, not a home, she sees it as a business, she's quite happy to go against everything she pretends to believe in as a socialist, as a Labour minister, just to earn more money. Now, most people would do this. Most people would do this because it's £700 a month. Most people I know would do this. But to be the minister for homelessness and pretend you're a socialist and you're on the side of the poor, the vulnerable, the working class, this is just another example of politicians who are not only just out of touch, but completely lie to us all the time about their compassion.
Now, what Ali herself says is that she wanted to sell the house. The house went onto the market. We don't know precisely how long for, but it wasn't a It wasn't a number of years, it was a number of months.
I think it was a matter of weeks, yes.
And she was unable to sell the house, and then the company that was handling all of the rental details for her, she says, put up that rent. Is there a point here that this was a very sort of hands-off operation from her? If we should go after anyone, we should go after the company that she hired to sort of squeeze the money out of the property?
Another example of, it's not my fault, is it? It's not my fault. I pay this company to look after my property, and they may harass my tenants, they may abuse, they may assault my tenants. But it's not my fault, is it? Because it's not me, it's not me. This is just excuse making. That company works for her. They take direction from her. And let's say it's all true, what she said. I've got no evidence that it's not true. Let's say she put the house for sale and it didn't sell for whatever reason. I'll tell you why it didn't sell. She was asking too much money because she's a socialist who believes in capitalism. That's what she is. So the house didn't sell. She puts it back on the market. It's quite lucky, isn't it? Isn't it quite lucky that you put it back on the market to rent and there's a £700 increase in the rent? Isn't that lucky? I'll tell you what, I'd like to be as lucky as her.
Yes, particularly when you're working in a government that claims it wants to empower people to challenge unreasonable rent increases. One might argue £700 is unreasonable. Nick Buckley, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much indeed. A charity worker who's worked on homelessness. Should we get Paul Richards' thoughts? You were shaking your head a little there, if I may say.
Well, I think it's a bit rich just to impugn her character in that way. He's got no evidence at all about what her motives were. And I have to say the £700 increase is reflective of that part of London, I'm afraid, because of the overheated house price and rental market in that part of London. In fact, it's probably less than what the market would suggest. And most importantly, nobody got evicted. This word evicted suggests that there was a legal process to get out tenants who wanted to stay. They were offered the chance to stay, according to the statement. They chose not to, and then they left. And then the next lot in, happy to pay this new rent.
Labour's own bill that's to come into force next year
Don't say the word evicted.
Is saying that landlords should not be able to end a tenancy to sell a property for relisting it for higher rent until at least 6 months after tenants have moved out. They're trying to make tougher and tougher regulations on just this type of thing, Paul. That's why there's such hypocrisy here.
I don't think it's hypocritical, because I think if it was the case that these particular tenants, who are all very wealthy, by the way, to afford that in the first place, these are not poor, impoverished renters in London.
Well, hang on, we don't know how many tenants there were in this property.
Well, the one that's complained is a very shishi restaurant owner, I believe. So, you know, these are not people who are on the bottom end of the scale.
Well, we have no idea what her salary is.
And one of them has, well, look at the reviews of the restaurant. One of them has gone public in this way and saying that no MP should be a landlord. OK, well, that's a legitimate point of view. But I would say also the Conservatives have been remarkably quiet, because look at their front bench and how many of them are landlords, I wonder.
And yet the difficulty, there's the employment, not the employment, right, the Renters' Rights Bill, which has this peculiar phrase of no-fault evictions. Yes. Because as you rightly say, saying someone should leave a tenancy at the end of that tenancy, to me, isn't an eviction. I've had that, I've left, I don't feel that I've been evicted. The tenancy has ended and I have left. But the bill that the government is passing will make that very normal thing that I think we all think is normal, will make that illegal, because tenancies by default will be infinite. Once you get onto a tenancy, you will be on there forever, unless the landlord decides to sell. I mean, this is the law that the Labour Party is instituting, which rather goes against the point that this wasn't an eviction. I mean, I agree it wasn't an eviction, but clearly the Department for Housing, Community and Local Governments doesn't.
Well, we're going to have to leave it there, because the spokesperson for Rushanara, thank you, Paul Richards, by the way, Rushanara Ali has said Rushanara takes her responsibilities seriously and complied with all relevant legal requirements.
Short but sweet. Now, a Kremlin aide has confirmed that Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump will have a face-to-face meeting in the coming days as the US president ramps up efforts to bring an end to the war in Ukraine.
Yes, the Kremlin also confirmed a location for the meeting between Trump and Putin, saying it's been agreed, with details to be announced later.
So, could this be the start of a genuine path to peace in Ukraine, or a dead end?
OK, well, GB News political correspondent Catherine Forster is here with us. I mean, it looks like a step in the right direction.
Well, certainly. And, of course, President Trump said that he'd originally said he would end the war in 24 hours, then in 100 days. But to his credit, this war had been raging for years and nobody ever talked about how it would go to end. We all just heard, we are with Ukraine, whatever it takes. As soon as Donald Trump was elected, the conversation changed to ending the war. Now, Donald Trump, I think it's interesting. Steve Witkoff, the US Special Envoy, has been and met Putin 4 times before, and every single time Donald Trump has said, oh, it went really well, I'm really hopeful of getting a ceasefire, always was looking on the bright side. Now it seems that something might actually change. He's being a bit more cautious in his language. So he said, I don't call it a breakthrough. We have been working at this for a long time. Thousands of young people are dying, and I want to get this done. Marco Rubio, the US Secretary of State, has said there is a lot of work to do. But look, the fact that Putin and Trump are going to meet in person is definitely significant. It sounds like there will be then a meeting also with Zelensky. Zelensky has said that European leaders must be involved. There's been a lot of phone calls in the last few days between Trump, Zelensky, Merz, Mark Rutte, the NATO Secretary General, Sir Keir Starmer, our Prime Minister. So look, let us hope that something comes of this, although the noises out of Russia aren't so much as going towards a ceasefire as some sort of possible air truce. But look, I think the fact that Trump gave Russia a deadline, which expires tomorrow, is obviously focusing minds in Russia, and the fact that they are slapping tariffs on India because India is buying all of this Russian oil.
Really significant stuff. Well, Catherine, we'll be back with you a little bit later in the programme for more on that as it develops. But thank you very much in the meantime. And now, of course, it's your chance to win a year of rent-free or indeed mortgage-free living with 5,000 quid thrown in, because we're just such nice people. But, of course, if your mortgage is already paid, if you have no rent to pay, lucky you, no Member of Parliament landlords perhaps, we'll chuck you £15,000. Here's the details.
This is your chance to live mortgage or rent-free for an entire year in the latest Great British Giveaway. That's right, we'll give you a cash lump sum that will cover 12 of your monthly mortgage or rent payments, up to an incredible £20,000. Plus, we'll add £5,000 on top of that for you to treat yourself. And if you don't have a mortgage or rent to pay, lucky you, we'll give you £15,000 in cash instead. You have to hurry though, as lines will close on the 29th of August. For a chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entry start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB15 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 29th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
This is our country, and we think it's amazing. From high tea to the high street, we love it all. Even the rain, we like that too. There's nowhere else we'd rather be. That's why we're here to be the fearless champion of Britain, its voices and its values. Because we are GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m. only on GB News.
You've read the headlines, you've heard what those in power have to say. How about now we actually get to the truth?
They would pay attention.
We go beyond the political theatre and tell you what's really going on behind the scenes. For a massive council tax hike, one of the biggest in the UK. Others follow their lines, but we go off script.
You sound like a broken record. You say that week after week.
Cutting through the narratives and giving you unique perspectives. That's Ben Leo tonight, Saturdays and Sundays from 9 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes and Kerr weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 28 minutes past 1. Now, Kemi Badenoch has revealed she's lost her faith in God over the horrific case of the Austrian sex offender, Joseph Fritzl.
Yes, the Conservative leader said she's never been that religious, but after hearing the horrific details of the 2008 case, which involved rape and incest, she rejected her faith.
Well, today we're asking, is belief in God still important in politics? Or have we moved on from this nation's Christian roots?
Well, we're joined by the Director of Affinity at Gospel Churches in Partnership, Graham Nichols, and the Head of Domestic Policy at Pictorial House, which is a think tank that looks at multiculturalism, Jacob Williams. Graham, I'll start with you. Is it a shame that Kemi Badenoch has lost her faith, and is it a shame that that's perhaps missing from politics?
I think it is a shame. Whether she ever had a robust faith is not quite clear. That's only for her and God to know. But the fact that she's expressing the fact that she doesn't believe in God anymore is obviously a sad thing, because both historically but also practically, Christianity is an influence for good. And being a Christian, obviously I want lots of people to be Christians, so it's a shame in every kind of aspect. And of course, people can't be neutral in politics. If you don't have a Christian belief system, you have another belief system that you then apply to all the decisions. So it's not like there's some neutral space and then there's a religious space. We're all religious. It just depends what we believe, what our morality is, what our values are, and how they connect to the decisions that we make. So it's sad that she's kind of saying, I like bits of Christianity, but I don't really like having a relationship with God and accepting that God even exists. So it's a kind of
on that
half
point, Graham, before we come to Jacob, isn't that basically where a lot of Brits are? I mean, we know that church attendance is on the floor. We know that people quite like the sort of infrastructure of Christianity. They like Christmas. They like sort of the stories. But do they believe there's a man in the sky? According to new polling, less than half of Brits now do.
Absolutely. Less than half, and probably in practice, I don't know, 5% of people that would be committed as Christians. So it's not a surprise that she would be expressing that. I would take issue that I think nominal kind of Christianity was probably more of a thing a generation or more ago. The trend has probably been a bit more away from that, but just now is turning a little bit more towards that, because people are thinking, well, where do all these values come from that we're arguing about, to do with, equality and loving people and caring for the needy and the vulnerable and so forth, and how you define the nation state? They all come from our Christian heritage. So there's a little bit of a trend back. And actually, Christianity, church attendance is not as bad as you're saying. It's actually on the rise slightly. So there's
some young people are turning up at church in larger numbers, I hear. But Jacob, let's turn to you. Do you think we need a bit more Christianity in our politics?
Well, I think it'd be a very good thing. And I say this as a Muslim. Many religious minorities, Muslims and others, would think it was a wonderful thing if Christianity was stronger in Britain. We recognise the importance of Christianity to our heritage, to our culture, and indeed to the freedoms that we all enjoy, minorities most saliently of all. I'm less particularly concerned about Kemi Badenoch's personal beliefs than about the state of public life in general. And the one issue on which I'd have to enter a note of disagreement here is the idea there's no neutral space. Of course, no one can be neutral in all of their beliefs, but we do have a set of values we recognise are common to people of all faiths and none. And recognising that's very important. It avoids the risk of sliding into using the language of theocracy, the language of saying that you have to believe in God or hold some particular religious beliefs to be a good leader, be a good politician or a good citizen. I think that's something we should reject. That's the kind of value that's held by a small minority of Christians, a small minority of Muslims, people
Jacob,
like the Catholic.
what brought you to Islam? So did you convert?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I did. And I really think we have a great deal in common with Christians insofar as we recognise what I believe is the same God, and we recognise the teachings of Jesus as very important. We just disagree as to whether he was indeed the Son of God or just sent by God. But the important point about our public life is there are values that Christians, Muslims and atheists all share, including the values of religious freedom, freedom of speech, and treating all human beings with dignity and respect. And those are the values our public life should be based on, not any one religion or other.
Well, of course, those are the values that we'd like to think everyone believes in today. But throughout history, we have seen a little bit more tension in those areas. We have seen people burnt at the stake because there is not the correct flavour of Christianity. Only a few hundred years ago, you have to go back for the sort of Bloody Mary period of this country's history. Or indeed, after 1688, you know, you had the Protestant supremacy. I mean, we have had great religious division in this country. I wonder, Graham, if this country now doesn't really have much room for politics, in the way that when Tony Blair was asked whether he prayed with George W. Bush, in America that was a normal question. In Britain that was mocked.
Yes. I think you're asking about whether politics has space for religion. It's not true that there's some neutral space where there's a whole load of agreed values. There's quite a lot to fight about. We've had some terrible votes recently to do with assisted suicide and to do with abortion changes, which these are not a commonly held set of values. These are things to argue for. If you take away the root, which is the Judeo-Christian faith, then actually you don't have the fruit for that long. We're still kind of in the overhang of all the Christian influence.
Yeah, and religious teachings lost in that debate, really, frankly. Graham, we're going to have to leave it there, but really appreciate your insight on this. Graham Nichols and Jacob Williams, thank you very much for your time.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Plenty more to come, including the government cracking down on unregulated beauty procedures amid growing concerns over unsafe Botox fillers and cosmetic treatments. That's after the headlines.
Yes, thank you. The headlines this afternoon. The Bank of England has cut its base interest rates. The bank's Monetary Policy Committee has reduced the base rate by 0.25 percentage points from 4.25% to 4%. The government has detained the first illegal Channel migrants under the deal with France. The number of illegal arrivals since the new UK-France returns deal came into operation is now at 311. A Kremlin aide has confirmed the US president will be meeting the Russian president in the coming days to discuss a peace deal with Ukraine. A record number of 18-year-olds are likely to get into their first choice of university this year, even if they narrowly miss their grades. Those are the latest headlines for now. More in half an hour.
For all the latest from GB News whilst you're on the go, get the GB News app. Scan the QR code now to download or visit gbnews.com/app.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. It's been a rather drizzly start for some of us this morning, brightening up nicely this afternoon, leaving a day of sunny spells and showers, but you're really going to notice those winds strengthen across northern areas this evening. That's all thanks to this area of low pressure, dragging in some cloud and some outbreaks of rain, and notice a real squeeze on the isobars there, particularly across western Scotland. So a breezy day here, and winds will strengthen more and more as the day goes on. And then we'll see plenty of blustery showers moving eastwards across northern areas, in particular Scotland, Northern Ireland and northern and central parts of England. We'll see that cloud linger through much of the day across parts of the south. Still some drizzly outbreaks, particularly across Devon and Cornwall, but feeling warm in any brighter spells, highs reaching around 23 to 24 degrees Celsius. So a blustery end to the day across Scotland in particular. Western exposed coast, for example, there is a chance we'll start to see some gales later in the night. Still plenty of blustery showers moving through too. Still the chance of the odd shower, particularly around coastal areas of Northern Ireland and northern parts of England. Still, once again, could see 1 or 2 showers by the time we reach later into this afternoon. Any drizzle will eventually clear away across the south through into the evening, still leaving a remnants of cloud for a time before this clears away as we head towards dawn. And those showers are still set to continue, particularly across Scotland. And as I say, a risk of gales by the time we reach the early hours of the morning. So do take care if you're travelling during the early hours of Friday. But elsewhere, it should be mostly dry, and it's going to be particularly mild across the south. Some towns and cities not dropping past 15, maybe even 16 degrees Celsius. So a mild start, and it leads us into a warm day across much of England and Wales. Plenty of bright spells and even some sunshine by the time we reach the afternoon. But a very different story across Scotland. Strong winds continuing here and also outbreaks of rain. This at times could turn quite heavy and blustery. But where you see the sunshine, once again, a little warmer than this afternoon. Highs reaching 25 degrees Celsius.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon, this is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. The M8 westbound at junction 22 faces restrictions due to a breakdown, causing a 12-minute delay eastbound. Roadworks on the M4 westbound mean diversions. In Staffordshire, the M6 southbound between junctions 14 and 13 has 40-minute delays. Warwickshire's A5 southbound remains closed after a vehicle struck a bridge near the junction with the A47 Nuneaton and the M69. In Cambridgeshire, a collision on the A14 westbound at junction 20 Ellington Road keeps one lane closed. And on the trains, expect disruptions on cross-country services between Doncaster and Sheffield. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 38 minutes past 1. Now, the government has announced plans to crack down on dodgy cosmetic practitioners.
Ever fancied a Brazilian butt lift?
Personally, no.
No? Just a little hoik?
I think I'm fine as things are.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I've never. Shall we move on?
Never thought about it. Never crossed your mind.
It hasn't until you. No, even now, not crossing my mind. No.
Well, under new proposals, only qualified health professionals will be able to carry out risky, non-surgical Brazilian butt lifts, and clinics need to meet strict rules to obtain these licences.
I'm amazed this wasn't already the case.
Yeah.
But the Health Minister, Karen Smith, says that industry has been plagued by a wild west of cosmetic cowboys, causing serious damage.
Well, we're joined by broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy. Now, Lizzie, I've just been told that you had filler several years ago, and it was a bit of a disaster. Tell us.
Well, it was more than a disaster. It nearly blinded me. I stupidly didn't do my homework. I had just had a split from who I thought was the love of my life, was very low and down. And my friend said, I know what, look, let's go and get, have a little pick-me-up and have a bit of filler. There's one just down the high street. We hadn't done our homework. We didn't know who he was. And I thought, yeah, why not? I looked tired, I hadn't slept, and I was very low at the time. And I went and did something that I said I'd never do. And sadly, for me, it was the worst thing of my life. It nearly blinded me. I wasn't told that the filler actually, can move. I nearly went blind with that. My vision was blurred immediately after, and they actually just put the filler in the wrong place, way too far to the eyes. And no one tells you that actually filler migrates, it travels. And for me, I'm very thankful I could see. So you can imagine how frightening that actually was for me.
So this was a very, serious procedure. I mean, it's non-surgical, it's just an injection.
Yeah.
But an injection that close to your eye where if it goes in the wrong place, this stuff migrates, that is dangerous stuff.
It's very dangerous, and no one tells you about this. And I just wanted to get rid of tired eyes. I just wanted to feel better about myself, as many people would do after something, very, terrible happens to you. And I was distraught at the time, and I thought, look, I want to make myself look better. I felt very low, and literally, I knew instantly. My face started to swell. I looked distorted. My eyes were swelling up. And I thought maybe I've got an allergic reaction to it. But what actually the real reason for this was that this guy wasn't a proper, surgeon, physician. He was a cowboy. Don't forget, this is big business. People make big money out of this. And I was naive, I was stupid, and I paid the price. But thankfully, I was able to get this removed in time and save my eyesight.
But Lizzie, you shouldn't think that it's on you for this. I mean, if people dress up as if they're medical professionals, obviously don't say it, but heavily imply it, and it's all with the sort of medical garb and get-up. We've all seen these sort of shops. I mean, that is pulling the wool over your eyes.
Well, it really is pulling the wool over people's eyes, and I have fought tirelessly for this to happen. I've had a big campaign with a national newspaper saying, because there's many young girls, they look at celebrity magazines saying, I want to look like this, let's go and have this treatment, not doing their homework, just going in willy-nilly, and it's very frightening. And there are cowboys out there making huge amounts of money from this, and it's a big business. And they are playing on people's insecurities and vulnerabilities. And I'm so glad that this has been passed today, but it's been a long time coming and hasn't come soon enough.
Yeah, I mean, and you in a particularly low ebb of your life, just with a relationship breaking down, wanted to do something nice. Filler, for those who don't know, is essentially just an injection to sort of plumpen up certain areas of your face. Maybe you can have it in your cheekbones, maybe, or under your eyes, or somewhere else, just to make you look a bit more rejuvenated, essentially. And to have something like that, something that does come down to vanity, let's face it, to then be such a medical disaster, I can't imagine what you went through there, Lizzie, to be honest.
It was very, very frightening. I thought I wouldn't see my boys again. I wouldn't be able to work. I've worked very hard since my divorce to look after my family. And I actually thought, gosh, for doing this stupid thing, my whole world could change. And that is the important message. And this is why this bill today is so important. And I say to anyone out there that's thinking just to have a bit of Botox, a bit of filler, thinking, nothing of it, please do your homework. It is so important. And I would never want anyone out there to go through what I went through.
Well, thanks so much for sharing your story with us here. Really, really appreciate it, and your time, and frankly, your bravery as well. Lizzie Cundy, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, Lizzie. Don't just go into any shop, make sure they actually have some credentials. Goodness me, that'd be so awful. It's like a 5-minute treatment as well.
And do you know what? There are a hell of a lot of resident doctors
who do it,
qualified resident doctors who run little things on the side.
Dentists.
It's how they bump their salaries up into the 6 figures, because a lot of them do this. A lot of them run qualified medical degree level clinics.
Yeah.
And do you know what? You're doing your bit to help out the doctors.
Have you heard of the Botox party?
What's a Botox party?
This is where either a dentist or a doctor or a nurse invites their mates over, says, I'll do your Botox for, the price of the actual Botox.
Is this why resident doctors all look like they're 21 years old?
They've got shiny foreheads, yeah.
They're
like
actually
a bowling
40.
Ball. Like a bowling ball. But you wouldn't consider Botox at this stage of your life?
No, I quite like having an expressive face.
Yes, it does freeze things after a while, I think.
Sometimes people say my face is too expressive, but, at least there's some movement there.
Yeah, so if you want a boob job, if you want an eyebrow lift, if you want a butt lift, if you want lipo, go to someone who's reputable. But the only worry I have about this law is that people will go off to other countries.
Yes, that is a risk.
Because it's a cost issue, isn't it?
Although there is always the other option.
What's that?
Join a gym.
All right. It's more difficult for some people. Then you'll say Mounjaro, won't you?
Yeah. I'll say Ozempic.
Yeah.
Of course, if you want to fly away to a country that doesn't have such restrictive regulations on plastic surgery, here's the travel weather.
I hope we haven't forgotten anything.
Travel insurance, I tick that box.
Yeah, but remember what you forgot last year.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Across northwest Africa and western parts of Iberia, another heat wave is set to continue this week. Temperatures pushing into the low 40s, particularly across inland areas. And with those high temperatures comes plenty of sunshine, particularly across Spain, parts of Italy and also parts of Greece. And those UV levels are set to be high, so do take care if you're heading out on holiday. And that weather is set to continue as we head over the weekend and into next week. That's it from me. Bye-bye.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Patrick Christie's Tonight, weekdays from 9 p.m.
Are the Prince and Princess of Wales animal abusers? It's time now for the head-to-head. Well, Peter's at it again, this time aiming at the Prince and Princess of Wales for daring to breed their Cocker Spaniels. The animal rights activists say that the royal couple are, quote, out of touch and slam them for churning out a litter while rescue centres are overflowing. It comes after Kensington Palace released a photo of Prince William and dog Orla and her 3 puppies, snapped by Kate for his 43rd birthday. So, is it really cruel? Are the royals cruel for breeding their dogs? Well, going head-to-head on this now, I'm pleased to be joined by Senior Corporate Projects Manager at Peter, Dr Caris Bennett, and dog trainer John Allison.
There's all these dogs that are desperately needing a home. Why breed more dogs into the world? It sends the wrong message. And in fact, you don't have to look far to see the right message. King Charles and Camilla adopted Molly, a lovely dog from an animal rescue. And we encourage everyone to do the same. If you're looking to have a companion animal at home, please go to an animal rescue, never breed dogs.
It's very important to note that it's natural for dogs to breed and create their puppies. I think it's absolutely ludicrous to label the royal family irresponsible. We just have to look at their incredible record of animal welfare and how much they have done for animal welfare throughout the country. Unlike an organisation like PETA, who only recently contributed to dogs being put in rescue centres when they supported the banning of the XL bully.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m.
Only on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's just gone 10 to 2. Now, I know some people got in touch about the last item we did when I suggested something that you could do instead of having a cosmetic procedure is go to the gym. Anna wrote in to say, Tom, are you suggesting going to the gym will act as filler for a frown line? And I do completely understand why that sounds ludicrous, because, yeah, I'm not suggesting that at all.
In fact, you'll probably get more wrinkles if you get skinny.
You could well. But we were also talking about Brazilian bottom lifts.
Yes.
And firmer bottoms, I'm fairly sure, is something that can be brought about by going to the gym.
Tom does his squats, so has a particularly peachy bottom.
I don't do enough, really.
Anyway, enough about your bottom. We're going to talk about a Spanish town because it sparked controversy after becoming the first in the country to ban Muslim religious festivals in public spaces.
Well, this has all been brought about by the right-wing Vox party, which has hailed the decision, declaring Spain is and will be forever the land of Christian people.
However, critics of the move have described it all as Islamophobic and an attack on freedom of religion. So, yes.
This is particularly difficult for Spain as a country, because, of course, Spain for many hundreds of years was an Islamic country. And
well,
then it was reconquered by...
It was conquered, then reconquered, then conquered, then reconquered. So I don't think you could say it was a Muslim country.
Well,
but
I mean,
it has a history of a lot of Islamic influences.
In the same way that Britain was a pagan country before it was invaded by the Anglo-Saxons and before them the Romans, and Christianity was brought that way. I mean, but then again, I mean, the area that Islam grew out of, I mean, before it was Islamic, it was Jewish. So
it's changed hands, let's say, but since the 15th century, it has been a Christian country.
Spain, that is.
Spain has, yes. Not the UK. I'm not talking about, or England, indeed. But yes, so this particular town has taken this strong stance and said we don't want Muslim festivals being held in civic buildings, presumably in public spaces, and in other areas.
Now, I mean. That's understandable. I mean, that is already the rule in much of France, because France has a national secularism. So you can't have sort of big religious displays in public buildings. But, of course, they do have religious buildings, and I'm sure they do have religious displays in squares.
I mean, I know in this country people can feel quite uncomfortable. For example, there's a Shiite Muslim festival. I think it's a day of mourning, Ashura, I believe it's called. And large groups of men will take to the streets in various cities around the country to self-flagellate. With their tops off, which is something that's been pictured in places like Manchester and other areas of the country, and that is what it appears to be quite aggressive in how it appears, this particular activity. So I can understand why people wouldn't want that necessarily next door, but I do wonder where Spain's going to go with this, really.
Yeah, and whether it...
Can you ban people from, praying or from holding some kind of festival in a public space? Are you therefore making them second-grade citizens? Then you have all the legal trappings of that.
I think it really depends what we mean by public space as well. If this is a public space that is, rentable by people, I think it's probably bad if you're saying we will not rent it to one particular religion.
Well, that's what they're saying, isn't it, really?
But if it's just sort of a space where there's no money changing hands, then, I mean, then that's sort of more of a government decision.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's something quite strange about this, but I do sort of understand why people don't want to see their towns radically change so much.
Well, absolutely. Let us know your thoughts. GBNews.com/your say. Do get in touch. This is just one town in Spain. It'll be very interesting to see if others follow. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on the show. Is it time for Trump to get really tough on Vladimir Putin? We'll discuss. That's after the weather.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. It's been a rather drizzly start for some of us this morning, brightening up nicely this afternoon, leaving a day of sunny spells and showers. But you're really going to notice those winds strengthen across northern areas this evening. That's all thanks to this area of low pressure, dragging in some cloud and some outbreaks of rain. And notice a real squeeze on the isobars there, particularly across western Scotland. So a breezy day here, and winds will strengthen more and more as the day goes on. And then we'll see plenty of blustery showers moving eastwards across northern areas, in particular Scotland, Northern Ireland and northern and central parts of England. We'll see that cloud linger through much of the day across parts of the south. Still some drizzly outbreaks, particularly across Devon and Cornwall, but feeling warm and any brighter spells, highs reaching around 23 to 24 degrees Celsius. So a blustery end to the day across Scotland in particular. Western exposed coast, for example, there is a chance we'll start to see some gales later in the night. Still plenty of blustery showers moving through too. Still the chance of the odd shower, particularly around coastal areas of Northern Ireland and northern parts of England. Still, once again, could see one or two showers by the time we reach later into this afternoon. Any drizzle will eventually clear away across the south through into the evening, still leaving a remnants of cloud for a time before this clears away as we head towards dawn. And those showers hours are still set to continue, particularly across Scotland. And as I say, a risk of gales by the time we reach the early hours of the morning. So do take care if you're travelling during the early hours of Friday. But elsewhere, it should be mostly dry, and it's going to be particularly mild across the south. Some towns and cities not dropping past 15, maybe even 16 degrees Celsius. So a mild start, and it leads us into a warm day across much of England and Wales. Plenty of bright spells and even some sunshine by the time we reach the afternoon. But a very different story across Scotland. Strong winds continuing here and also outbreaks of rain. This at times could turn quite heavy and blustery. But where you see the sunshine, once again, a little warmer than this afternoon. Highs reaching 25 degrees Celsius.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Box Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Let us take on some of your financial stresses and pay your mortgage or rent for the next 12 months. We want to give you a cash lump sum equivalent to 12 of your monthly mortgage or rent payments, up to an unbelievable £20,000. We'll also boost that by a further £5,000, so you really could have some fun in the coming year. For a chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB15 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 29th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Beth.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie's here.
I'm Michelle Duke, Britain's News Channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection, tune in to GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 2 o'clock on Thursday, the 7th of August. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Emily Carver.
Now, the first illegal Channel migrants have now been detained under Labour's new deal with France. The Home Secretary had this to say.
No one should be making this journey in the first place, and that's why this is now starting the process to return people and to undermine this vile trade in people.
A Kremlin aide confirms Vladimir Putin and President Trump will meet in person next week to discuss ending the war in Ukraine. Will Trump lay down the law?
Now, Centre Barley, the charity, may take action against Prince Harry over claims he was cleared of wrongdoing. A war of words erupts over bullying allegations.
And Rushanara Ali is facing criticism after reportedly hiking the rent on her property by £700 just weeks after evicting tenants, while serving as the minister responsible for homelessness.
Elsewhere, a Northamptonshire village is furious at the prospect of a new solar panel farm, with the local MP, Sarah Bull, leading the calls to scrap the idea.
You're going to be taking agricultural fields out of use and replacing it with solar panels when there are warehouses, there are car parking spaces and other dead spaces you can use. That is the right place, not here.
Needs a local MP when you can have an AI bot. Yes, one MP has launched an AI version of himself so constituents can reach him 24/7, around the clock. But it couldn't say if Sir Keir Starmer is a good Prime Minister. If I was programming as a Labour MP, if I wanted an AI bot and I was programming it, I think I'd say, be nice about the Prime Minister.
In your system prompt, you put that front and centre.
Yeah.
But
be
the thing is
about Labour.
But this is the thing about large language models. I mean, you can set a system prompt at the top to try and steer it in the right way.
Yeah.
But ultimately, you don't know how this thing is programmed. These things people aren't typing out the code. These things are grown almost organically.
Yeah, which makes them
They program
more
themselves,
worrying.
so you don't really know what it's going to say. So to some extent, it's a little bit of a recipe for disaster.
I mean, I think it's a good idea, actually, in terms of, if you've got a concern about something, perhaps you haven't had the right benefit come in, or your bin hasn't been collected, or I don't know what else you need from your local MP.
I mean, that sounds more like a council issue.
It does, but then the bot will say, get in touch with your local council.
To be honest, you could sort out about 95% of MPs' constituency work by just setting up an auto-reply. Here's the number for your local councillor.
Can you imagine, though, if you're making a complaint, you're hurling abuse at the MP, and you get back, I really appreciate you getting in touch. That's what you'd get, wouldn't it? Something really passive-aggressive.
Oh, but the thing is...
Thank you for sharing your thoughts with me. That would infuriate me.
I know that we're going to come on to this a little bit later, so I don't want to spoil all the surprises. But you can ask questions that do lead to some very, very curious results. So perhaps the technology is a little bit too green as things stand, but more on that a little bit later in the programme.
Leave that hanging there.
I think we'll leave
like
that.
Like a bad smell.
Well, leave it sort of so people are on the edge of their seats for the big reveal later in the show.
I look forward to it. I don't know what he's going to say. But it is your headlines with Tatiana.
Thank you very much. The top stories. The Bank of England has cut its base interest rate. The bank's Monetary Policy Committee has reduced the base rate by 0.25 percentage points from 4.25% to 4% today. It marks a fifth reduction since August last year, when rates started steadily coming down from a peak of 5.25%. Chancellor Rachel Reeves hailed the cut as good news for house buyers and businesses borrowing to grow.
Interest rates have now come down 5 times since Labour came to office, in part because of the stability that we've managed to return to the economy after the chopping and changing, the mini-budget under the Conservatives and Liz Truss. And what that means, that fifth cut in interest rates, is that if you're taking out a mortgage for £215,000, you're going to be paying on a variable rate around £140 less a month than when we came to office just over a year ago. So this is good news for people wanting to get on the housing ladder, people remortgaging, and also businesses borrowing to grow.
Migrants who arrived in the UK after crossing the Channel have been detained under the new one-in, one-out deal. A total of 311 small boat migrants have arrived in the UK since the government's return deal with France was signed. The Home Office said they'll be held in immigration removal centres until their return to France. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper says it sends a message to every migrant thinking of making the illegal journey.
Well, the pilot has now begun, and the first migrants who arrived on small boat are now in detention. That is the first step to removing them to France, because no one should be making this journey in the first place, and that's why this is now starting the process to return people and to undermine this vile trade in people. We won't provide operational details at this point that criminal gangs can simply use and exploit. But no one should be in any doubt. Anyone who arrives from now on is eligible for immediate detention and return. And this pilot will now build because we are determined that no one should be making this journey.
Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp spoke to GB News Breakfast.
I'm afraid it's got no chance of working because we know that under this plan, only 6% of people crossing will get returned to France, 94% will get to stay in the UK. And obviously, if 94% can stay in the UK, that's no deterrent at all. But I did think yesterday, I'll go and check it out for myself. So I was on the channel yesterday in a fishing boat. I went from Dover to Calais, had a look around the French coast. And actually the weather was there was a bit of a swell because of the aftermath of the storm. So the conditions weren't great, but within half an hour of arriving off the French coast, we found 2 boats stuffed full of illegal migrants, almost entirely young men, I would add, about 150 of them in total in 2 boats. So they clearly hadn't been deterred at all.
And King Charles will deliver an audio message to the nation next Friday to mark the 80th anniversary of Fiji Day. August the 15th marks the end of the Second World War around the world, and the royal family will attend services across the country to mark the occasion. The King and Queen will attend the service of remembrance at the National Memorial Arboretum in Staffordshire. The national service, hosted by the Royal British Legion in partnership with the government, will be followed by a reception during which the royal couple will have the opportunity to meet Second World War veterans. Those are the latest headlines for now. More in half an hour.
My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
And here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.3429 and €1.1534. The price of gold, £2,515 and 62 pence per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is at 9,089 points.
My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 7 minutes past 2. Now, earlier today, the first Channel migrants were detained under the terms of the United Kingdom's returns deal with France, with the government saying they will be returned to that country in the coming weeks.
Yes, well, the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, hailed the deal as groundbreaking. She added that the government is on track to do what no other government has ever done since this crisis first started.
However, critics do claim it will do little to stem the flow of illegal boat crossings, which, of course, have hit record levels this year.
OK, well, for more analysis, let's speak to human rights lawyer David Haig on this. David, thank you. I mean, I think the British public are very sceptical of these policy changes when it comes to the small boat crisis, because nothing seems to have had much of an impact so far. In fact, the problem seems to be getting worse. As a human rights lawyer, though, can you tell us whether this scheme will work legally, or will we face more legal challenges, do you expect?
Hi, good afternoon to you both. I think, I think the positive thing is they're doing something, but I really don't see how this is going to work, or how, that there's any real changes. Just so you know, the process when an illegal migrant comes, or when someone comes across, for instance, on the boat, what they need to do to start their asylum claim is go to a border official and say, I wish to claim asylum. And that's how that process starts. So what we know is that some of the people that have come across since the new policy was in place have been detained. We don't know how many, but maybe all of them. We know they've been detained. Now, presumably, if they've come across on the boat, they will have been informed by the smugglers what to do to start the asylum claim, which is say, I wish to claim asylum. At which point, and I think this is where this policy is going to come into problems, they have to go through that process. So, and they haven't changed the law to allow them to do anything different. So if those people have, all that's actually happened is that they've been detained in a detention centre as opposed to being taken to a hotel. I think that's the only difference at this stage. And this policy is still going to face an awful lot of legal challenges.
At the end of the day, what ran Rwanda into the mud? And I can't help thinking, time and time again, whenever I hear Labour politicians talk about their new returns deal, I just think of the parallels to the Conservatives boasting about their Rwanda deal. And all the same criticisms. It'll be a small number of people. Oh, yes, we'll ramp it up. It will be mired in legal claims. Oh, but there's somewhere for these people to go. I see the parallels in almost every argument. I mean, will it be as much of a disaster?
You would hope a little bit. And you've got human rights lawyers in charge. You've got obviously Keir Starmer and you've got Lord Herman. Now, they are very good human rights lawyers. So effectively, poacher gamekeeper, if you like. So they should know what the problems their policy will face as it, if they put it in place, what the problems it will place, obviously in our courts and obviously in the ECHR, they should know them very well, better than perhaps the Tories did. So one would hope that they've actually thought those out and that they will be, better in this case. But I don't see how, because we have the same law. We haven't changed the law. We haven't left the ECHR. We haven't changed the Human Rights Act. So how is this going to be any different?
Because, David, I take Tom's point that there are similarities between the Rwanda scheme and this returns deal, but there is one big difference, isn't there? Because the Conservatives brought in their illegal migration bill, which said that, according to domestic law, if you rock up at the beach in Dover, you will not be allowed to claim asylum. Now, Labour got rid of that, so you are no longer deemed illegal in the same way as you were under that Conservative Act of Parliament.
Yeah, I mean, that would, as we know, that was going to face challenges anyway. So whether or not that would have been, past the kind of the ECHR level is very doubtful. But, that's absolutely right. We're effectively in the same boat. The only difference is these people have been detained. Previously, what would happen, you'd go through this somewhat farcical situation of issuing immigration notices saying you're liable to be detained, then we are going to detain you, and this is the date we're going to send you back. Usually when people in the community, and of course that's when people didn't turn up. So the only difference here is that people have been detained. So, that's a slight change. But, I think I mentioned to one of your producers, I'm already aware of these gangs offering free return trips if you are detained, because the risk of being sent back is so low.
Wow. So if you come across on a small boat and you're one of the 5% or so, although the government's not committing to any numbers publicly, that do get sent back, you get a free ride and have another shot at it. That's incredible. I mean, why do you think it is that the government is not being clear about how many they intend to send back? We see in reports in the media of 50 per week. That would be around 5 or 6% of those that come over, or in a summer week, even smaller of a percentage. But the government's not committing to anything publicly. I mean, is this because we're going to see so many human rights sort of challenges to the deportation?
I think, Tom, it's an odd choice because, perhaps it was because they wanted to avoid, the very media circus that we now have saying, well, there's only a few percentages, about 5% that will go back. It's pointless, but in that case, any event, surely we should actually have the facts. We should know the facts. I can't see that making a difference with the people smugglers and their marketing. And it's certainly not going to make a difference, I think, with the public here. It is a trial scheme. And I would rather know the facts. If it's only a few, let's know that. And then let's look at other things. So it's an interesting choice to kind of not tell us the figures, because of course when you tell someone that you're not doing something or don't open this cupboard, everybody wants to open that cupboard.
Also, just very lastly, what do you make of the idea that we have to send France all the information about the people we want to send over there, but France doesn't necessarily have to do the same? Does it seem as though France is winning when it comes to this deal, David?
Absolutely. I mean, that's utterly absurd. I mean, there's no reason. It's absurd. And I think, perhaps France have got better negotiating teams than we have. And that it's a shame. But I can't see any valid reason for that we couldn't get around with the apparent intellectual human rights lawyers that we've got in charge of the country.
It's a fair point. David Hay, thanks so much for joining us, human rights lawyer, perhaps one of the most sensible human rights lawyers we have on the channel.
I was just about to say the same. I know that the selection of human rights lawyers that we do have on the show sometimes get under your skin ever so slightly. Obviously not mine. Anyway, in other news, a tiny English village will soon be surrounded by solar panels on 3 sides if developers get their way.
Well, the government's rush to renewables is causing fury in Easton Moordet in Northamptonshire. Our political correspondent Catherine Forster has the story.
It's the quintessential English village. 13th century church, thatched cottages, red phone box. Wheat is ripening in the fields surrounding Easton Moordet, for now. But Energy Secretary Ed Miliband's zeal for renewables looks set to change that. Juliet Jarvis from Stop Green Hill Solar explains.
It's going to be surrounded on 3 sides by 750 acres of glinting solar panels, maybe up to 4.5 metres tall, rotating to face the sun.
The proposed solar panels are part of Green Hill Solar Farm, to be built on agricultural land across 8 sites in Northamptonshire, in total just below the size of Heathrow Airport. Local MP Sarah Bull is concerned.
We need clean energy, and I am a fan of renewable energy, but it's not in the right place here. When you are going to be taking agricultural fields out of use and replacing it with solar panels when there are warehouses, there are car parking spaces and other dead spaces you can use, that is the right place, not here. So these are not NIMBYs for trying to have a logic and approach to helping our food security in the future.
Local farmers agree.
Where is the food coming from in the future? If they're going to put solar panels all over the farmland, the food's got to be imported because it won't be grown in this country. And we're only 60% self-sufficient now. It's madness. It really is madness to put solar panels on good agricultural land.
The government makes the final call, and Juliet admits.
We are, David, against the Goliath. That's absolutely sure.
And Green Hill is likely just one of many solar farms coming to British countryside soon. Villager Bernard Livesey fell in love with Eastern Mordett almost 40 years ago.
It's appalling. I shall be regretting it and mourning what we have lost for the rest of my life.
The government told GB News that solar is central to its mission to deliver energy security and bring down bills. It says all projects are subject to rigorous planning processes and the views of the local community. Catherine Forster, GB News.
Well, Catherine is with us in the studio. Catherine Forster, thank you very much. Which way do you think this is going to go then?
Well, ultimately, it's up to Ed Miliband because this is such a big solar farm that it's a nationally significant infrastructure project, which means that he gets the final say so. But look, this is one tiny village that's set to be surrounded on 3 sides by solar panels. It's part of a bigger solar farm over multiple sites, and the website of the company behind it clearly says solar farms are typically built on land with lower quality agricultural value where growing food is not optimum. Yet in this case, it's entirely on agricultural land and 2/3 of it is on the best quality land. So this village is currently surrounded by lovely fields of golden wheat ripening in the sun. They are set to go. So not only have you got very angry villagers going to have solar panels all around their village, but also there's real questions about food security and is this a good use of land?
But this isn't about the government seizing people's property. This is about farmers who own the land wanting to diversify their land and doing something else with their land. The farmers will make money from this. Why do the villagers think they have a right to say someone else's field that they don't know? They could buy the field, they could stop it if they bought the field, but it's not their field. It's the farmer's field. And if the farmer wants to put a solar panel on his own field, why should the villagers stop him?
Well, the villagers can't stop him, but the fact of the matter is that the land around this village is owned by a member of the aristocracy. So you've got a huge landowner that owns a lot of land that is farmed by tenant farmers. Now, those tenant farmers do not own that land.
Right.
So they have got no say in this. So, yes, there is going to be a lot of money made. There's going to be a lot of money made by the developers. There's going to be a lot of money made by the big landowners. But the people that live in the village and many of the tenant farmers don't have any say.
Also, it sounds like it's not their land. It's going to be such an eyesore, though, Tom. I feel like if you lived in this village, you'd be rather angry out there with your placards.
I would be angry.
4.5 metres tall, rotating to face the sun. 750 acres of solar panels. You live in a beautiful village.
I can see why people don't like it. But I also believe in property rights.
Well, clearly you're on the side of the aristocrat.
Well, no, I'm just... if you don't want... I mean, people could club together and buy a field and stop a farm that way. It just does seem a little bit communist that we've got a sort of club of people saying that someone who owns land can't do with their land what they want.
Yeah, but the government are involved. The government are involved.
Well,
he has to sign off on this.
The government are only involved on the communist side if they block the development.
He's got to sign off on this, and it's probably being subsidised by the taxpayer.
That is a fair point. The subsidy is the bit to the subsidy is the bit to object against here. Well, Catherine, thanks so much for bringing us that story. I'm sure a lot of people will have their own views in the comments section.
I'm excited to see what your views are.
I'm very much looking forward to read gbnews.com/your say.
Hideous solar farm, eh? 3 sides of the village. Anyway, we have got more royal action, actually, because the royal row rumbles on as it's revealed Centre Barley, the charity, may take further action against Prince Harry in that ongoing dispute over allegations of both bullying and misogyny.
Well, let's speak to our royal correspondent, Cameron Walker. Cameron, what's the latest?
Yes, well, do you remember I was sat here yesterday saying one of the main criticisms of a charity commission was that all parties, including Prince Harry and the chair, were allowing this row to play out in public. What's happened today? They're still allowing this row to play out in public, and they very much are continuing with that. So if you remember, the Charity Commission concluded, following allegations from the chair that Prince Harry had tried to cover up bullying and harassment and misogyny at Centre Barley, the charity he co-founded, they found there was no evidence of widespread bullying and harassment. Then Prince Harry's spokesperson put out a statement saying this clears him of all wrongdoing. Then earlier on today, sources close to Centre Barley said that he isn't cleared of all wrongdoing, and it's entirely wrong for his spokesperson to suggest this because it's not within the Charity Commission's remit to investigate individual allegations of bullying and harassment. Well, a source close to the former trustees, who, of course, resigned en masse because they disagreed with the chair, said it's remarkable. Just yesterday, Ms Chandauka, who's the chair, was applauding the Charity Commission's findings, yet today, after a flurry of unflattering headlines, she's back on the warpath, issuing yet another media statement only reinforces the Commission's criticism about using the press to air internal disputes, rehashing unsubstantiated allegations of bullying, misogyny and more, which the Commission found no evidence of, and dressing them up as a veiled threat isn't just provocative, it's pitiful. If Ms Chandauka has genuine concerns, she should spell them out plainly, or better yet, redirect her energy towards something truly worthwhile, like raising money for the Children's Centre Barley.
Gosh, tell us what you really think.
I know, exactly. They did not hold back, put it that way. The Charity Commission has basically told us this morning that both sides should just allow water to go under the bridge and just focus on what's best, which, of course, is the charity. And that's the problem, isn't it? Because of this public row, the focus is taken off what should be the focus, and that is helping the thousands of children in southern Africa living with HIV, AIDS and mental health problems. And the question now is going to be, how is this row going to affect the finances and the donors of Centre Barley? Is it going to survive? Is there going to be a massive drop-off in donors due to this row with Prince Harry, the fact that Prince Harry no longer a patron? We'll have to wait and see.
Well, Cameron Walker, thanks for bringing us that. Sad story, really.
Rather undignified, too.
Yeah. But perhaps you'd like to win a lot of money. Well, we're going to give you £5,000 perhaps in your bank and also pay your rent or mortgage for a year. And if you haven't got a rent or mortgage to pay, well, that's 15 grand for you. Here's how to win.
This is your chance to live mortgage or rent-free for an entire year in the latest Great British Giveaway. That's right, we'll give you a cash lump sum that will cover 12 of your monthly mortgage or rent payments, up to an incredible £20,000. Plus, we'll add £5,000 on top of that for you to treat yourself. And if you don't have a mortgage or rent to pay, lucky you, we'll give you £15,000 in cash instead. You have to hurry though, as lines will close on the 29th of August. For a chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB15 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 29th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up? About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 27 minutes past 2. Now, a Kremlin aide has confirmed Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump will have a face-to-face meeting in the coming days as the US president ramps up his efforts to bring an end to the war in Ukraine.
Yes, the Kremlin also confirmed location for a meeting between Trump and Putin had been agreed, but details are to be announced later.
So could this be the genuine start of a path to peace in Ukraine? Would such a meeting be organised if something hadn't been agreed behind the scenes?
Well, for more analysis, we're joined by spokesperson for Republicans Overseas UK, Jennifer Ewing. Jennifer, what do you suspect is going on here?
I think what you guys just said a minute ago, I think there is something that's been agreed, because I don't think you'd have President Putin and President Trump meeting face-to-face, where I think it's possibly in the UAE, that not confirmed, but I've heard that, unless there was at least some form of an outline of a deal that had been agreed. Which will most likely look like, obviously, it's going to be around territory. And then the second thing, and you've heard President Trump allude to this quite a bit, is bringing Russia back into normalized relations with the US and the rest of the world, especially in an economic perspective. He often talks about Russia can be so successful and, so wealthy. And so I think look out for those two things.
A lot of people will be perhaps taking a sharp intake of breath in terms of complete normalisation with Russian relations in any short order, given that, a lot of European politicians are sort of saying, well, we need to seize Russian assets to pay for the war debt and all this sort of stuff. Given that this could be a hard, fast-cut deal, will this actually sell? Will the Ukrainians be able to accept it?
Well, I think the Ukrainians are losing the war. They have been for over 3.5 years, and they'll have to accept it, right? I think Zelensky will be at the meeting, so that'll make sense. Hopefully he'll be at the meeting. And then with regards to something you just said about European leaders wanting to seize these Russian assets, Trump is never...
currently frozen.
Yeah, exactly. But, I know there's been talk about giving them to Ukraine, right? That would be insane. First of all, that would ruin the US dollar, right? We've already seen when the US dollar is used as a weapon, i.e. people freeze someone's reserve currencies. They just figure out other ways, whether it's the BRIC nations or whatever, to work around the US dollar. So that
but there
is
are
not
physical assets in European countries, yachts and the like, that are currently impounded. The British government could sell a bunch of Russian super yachts, raise a few million quid and fund some rebuilding of schools, hospitals and roads in Ukraine. It's been suggested by a lot of politicians. Wouldn't that be a sensible thing?
I don't agree with that. I don't think it would be a sensible thing. I think some people, if you step outside of the EU, would say that's stealing, right? I don't think it's going to. I don't think that's going to be done.
What about Europe? Will Europe and the European Commission and, of course, the United Kingdom to agree to such a deal if it were to sign away territory?
Well, what's interesting is we know over the last few months, President Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio, a lot of people in the U.S. under the America First policies have said to Europe, hey, it's your time to step up, start paying for this war. It's more existential to Europe than it is, say, to the United States of America. Now, whether or not the Europeans decided either, A, we can't afford to do that, or B, there's not the will to do that, because that would mean people would have to give up their socialized medicine or longer vacations, or all of these things that we in America don't have while we've been paying for this war. Something's gone on.
Isn't it interesting that for years and years and years you've had European politicians say, we can't do business with Russia, we mustn't do this, we must support Ukraine, and yet countries like Germany continue to buy millions of barrels of Russian oil? And they have to, because they're absolutely, they have no domestic power sort of production of them, so they shut down their nuclear power stations, they've had an insane energy policy, and yet rich America, given its energy policies that it's enjoyed for the last 15 or so years, and massive expansion in capacity, has been able to say, we're not just going to not buy Russian oil and gas, we're also going to put sanctions on India because they buy and re-export Russian gas too. I mean, the Americans have been able to do more on Russian energy than any European country.
Absolutely, and you'll recall that President Trump was mocked in his first term by the Europeans when he sort of pointed out to Germany, hey, perhaps you shouldn't be going so green and shutting down your energy because you're going to have to rely on Russia more and more. And in fact, here we are 4 or 5 years later.
Yeah, they all laughed, didn't they?
And that's happened. They all laughed at him. And with regards to India, I remember talking to an Indian gentleman, right, and after the war started in 2022, and he said, of course, my country is continuing to buy oil and gas from Russia because we're a poor country and, you know, our politicians care about, you know, what our bills look like. And I remember, I think it was the winter in the UK, that heating versus eating. Yeah. And I thought to myself, oh, I kind of wish that so we had cheaper gas, oil and gas too, but alas, so no, that's a big deal, those secondary sanctions with China and India.
Yeah. Well, fascinating. We'll see what happens, won't we? Jennifer Ewing, thank you very much indeed, spokesperson for Republicans Overseas UK.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more to come. Indeed, why are people having fewer children than they want to have? Some estimates mean that for every 100 adults alive today, they'll only have 50 grandchildren. So what on earth is behind this massive collapse in people having babies?
Thank you very much, Tom. The headlines at 2:30. The Bank of England has cut its base interest rate. The bank's Monetary Policy Committee has reduced the base rate by 0.25 percentage points from 4.25% to 4% today. The government has detained the first illegal Channel migrants under the deal with France. The number of illegal arrivals since the new UK-France returns deal came into operation is now 311. A Kremlin aide has confirmed the US president will meet the Russian President Putin in the coming days to discuss a peace deal with Ukraine. A record number of 18-year-olds are likely to get into their first choice of university this year, even if they narrowly miss their grades. And those are the latest GB News headlines. For now, more news at the top of the hour with Sam Francis.
Tune into GB News Radio wherever you are. Online, on DAB digital radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. It's been a rather drizzly start for some of us this morning, brightening up nicely this afternoon, leaving a day of sunny spells and showers. But you're really going to notice those winds strengthen across northern areas this evening. That's all thanks to this area of low pressure, dragging in some cloud and some outbreaks of rain. And notice a real squeeze on the isobars there, particularly across western Scotland. So a breezy day here, and winds will strengthen more and more as the day goes on. And then we'll see plenty of blustery showers moving eastwards across northern areas, in particular Scotland, Northern Ireland and northern and central parts of England. We'll see that cloud linger through much of the day across parts of the south. Still some drizzly outbreaks, particularly across Devon and Cornwall, but feeling warm in any brighter spells, highs reaching around 23 to 24 degrees Celsius. So a blustery end to the day across Scotland in particular. Western exposed coast, for example, there is a chance we'll start to see some gales later in the night. Still plenty of blustery showers moving through too. Still the chance of the odd shower, particularly around coastal areas of Northern Ireland and northern parts of England. Still, once again, could see 1 or 2 showers by the time we reach later into this afternoon. Any drizzle will eventually clear away across the south through into the evening, still leaving a remnants of cloud for a time before this clears away as we head towards dawn. And those showers are still set to continue, particularly across Scotland. And as I say, a risk of gales by the time we reach the early hours of the morning. So do take care if you're travelling during the early hours of Friday. But elsewhere, it should be mostly dry, and it's going to be particularly mild across the south. Some towns and cities not dropping past 15, maybe even 16 degrees Celsius. So a mild start, and it leads us into a warm day across much of England and Wales. Plenty of bright spells and even some sunshine by the time we reach the afternoon. But a very different story across Scotland. Strong winds continuing here and also outbreaks of rain. This at times could turn quite heavy and blustery. But where you see the sunshine, once again, a little warmer than this afternoon. Highs reaching 25 degrees Celsius.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. The A725 southbound on-slip at Belsey Hill roundabout is closed for roadworks. Drivers should follow the diversion. The M4 westbound is fully closed between junction 24 Coldra and junction 28 Tredegar Park. In Leeds, delays on the A1M southbound due to a traffic incident between junction 44 and 42 as 3 lanes are closed. A broken down vehicle on the M6 southbound between junction 13 and 12 closes 1 lane, causing delays. And on the trains, northern buses replace some routes due to disruption between Doncaster and Sheffield. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 2:37. Now, apparently the UK's birth rate has hit another record low, and a campaign has been launched to put measures in place to help people have more children.
In Britain, fewer people are having children than ever before.
The total fertility rate in England and Wales has dropped to 1.44, the lowest since records began. In Scotland, it's 1.28, closing in on famously low fertility Japan. At the rate that people in England and Wales are currently having children, every 100 people will have only 52 grandchildren between them.
Well, I'm very glad that you've been able to see that video and we've been able to play it, because thanks to the Online Safety Act, it's been age restricted on Twitter.
Why?
Extraordinarily.
Does it mention sex or something?
No, because all of these companies have every incentive under the Online Safety Act to be overzealous in their censorship in case they get something wrong. So lots of stuff is being taken down for people that haven't verified their ages, which is a crisis, because it's a very, very good video.
We've got 2 crises here.
But it does, there are 2 crises.
Yes,
here, twin crises. But the question remains, what can be done to tackle Britain's birth crisis?
Well, joining us to discuss this is the woman you just saw in that video, mother and head of the Boom campaign, Phoebe Arslanagic Little. Thank you very much, Phoebe. I appreciate your time on this one. I mean, so the problem is that not only are people not having enough children to sustain our population, but they're having fewer than they actually want. Why is that?
Exactly, as you say, Emily. So if you ask women of childbearing age, how many children would you like to have? They'll tell you 2.35. So on average, more than 2, but they're having 1.44. There's a gap there between what people would like to do, the way they'd be like to live their lives, and what they're actually able to do. When we ask people what the problem is, why don't they feel able to do that, they tell us it's a lot to do with financial insecurity. It's a lot to do with the difficulty of balancing motherhood with a career. We can think of other reasons, the way that life is structured today in modern Britain, that make it difficult to establish yourself and to become a mum or dad. Think about how likely you are as someone in your late 20s to be living at home with your parents, because it's so difficult and expensive to get out of your parents' home and establish your own household. No one is going to be having a baby while they're still at home and living with their mum and dad.
Yeah. I mean, this is a real crisis. Some of the statistics that you share in this video today are just astonishing. The number of schools that are downsizing or indeed closing in parts of the country because there just are baby deserts. But also this strange fact that on current numbers, for every 100 people, there will only be 50 grandchildren. But if we continue to go down in our birth rate, I mean, it could be as little as 25 grandchildren for every 100 adults. I mean, this is extraordinary population collapse level stuff.
Certainly it accumulates. You know, sometimes when people are talking about policies to help more parents, to help people become parents, people become disillusioned because there aren't really policies that show you can soar back up to like above replacement rate fertility, above 2.1 children. But actually, differences that might look fairly small to us, you know, the difference between a fertility rate that is 1.4 versus 1.8 or 1.6, over time, over generations, really add up and make a significant difference. So exactly, the figures that you're talking about, on our current trajectory, if everyone just stayed at the birth rate that we have now, we'd have 52 grandchildren for every 100 people. But if we decline to match the birth rate of Italy, which is maybe 1.2 now, then only 35, and if you're South Korea and you've got a fertility rate of 0.68, then it's only 14. So over time, you can see why it really matters that we introduce policies now that make it a bit easier, that mean that people can get themselves into a position to become a parent, can have another child.
In South Korea, every 100 people will only have 14 grandchildren between them. I mean, take a couple more generations and that's not a country anymore.
And that's almost certainly optimistic, right? Because it might be the case that South Korea's birth rate continues to decline. I mean, up until about 10 or 15 years ago, demographers really didn't think that birth rates could get as low as we see in South Korea. It was theorized that birth rates would fall to a kind of like natural floor, maybe 1.2, and then bounce straight back up again. But we're in uncharted territory here because that doesn't appear to be happening in lots of countries all over the world.
Phoebe, I mean, we talk a lot about, you hear a lot of people talking about how it's down to financial insecurity, it's down to housing, blah, 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 blah. But I'm not sure it actually is. I think it's more a cultural change, and I think it's got to do with more what women want to do with their lives and how their lives pan out. Yeah, the idea that you're in education for longer and all of that. Because if you actually look at some of the other statistics about non-UK born women in this country, they're having more babies than British-born women in this country. So does that not indicate that it's not necessarily about financial insecurity, that it's more about cultural tendencies, and perhaps a lot of British-born women have very high expectations of how they want their life to pan out in terms of disposable income, in terms of how much space they want, in terms of whether they want to still have a holiday every year and that sort of thing. So not willing to make the sacrifices that perhaps women in the past did, or perhaps new immigrant women would be happy to.
It's an extremely interesting point. Let me make 2 points in response. So number one, we do have a parent gap opening up in the UK between richer people and poorer people. So that means increasingly, the poorer you are, the less likely you are to ever become a mum or dad. If you're a wealthier person, if you're middle class or upper middle class, yes, you might have children later, but you're almost overwhelmingly likely to have the number of children you would like to have, usually a family of 2 or 3. But the poorer you are increasingly, you're not actually likely to get to that point. You're more likely to be involuntarily childless. And this mirrors a trend that we see in the rest of Europe, in Norway and Finland, for example. The other point I'd like to make is about the relationship between policy and culture. So often, again, in this policy area, people like to sort of talk about them as being like completely separate. You know, we have like policy here and the government can only influence like economic things. And here we have culture, you know, this amorphous, powerful thing. But actually, they very much feed into one another. I mean, if you have a society where people are having fewer and fewer children, it also means that a young person going about their life, socializing, they just don't see families as much. They don't interact with children as much. It becomes more difficult to imagine what your life is going to be like if you become a mum or dad, to think about if that's actually something that you want. Like so many other things, like the choice to go to university or the choice to get married, having children is to some extent peer influenced. So when you have policies that can help a few more people have children and do what they want to do anyway, that has all sorts of like positive effects.
But there's such a difference on where you've come from, those. For example, Somalian women in this country, 47% had 3 or more children, compared to just 7% among all families in the general population. Now, that's 2011. That's just one of the latest statistics I've found. So there are some groups, and I don't think Somali women are more likely to be financially better off in this country. In fact, probably the reverse. So those are cultural trends, aren't they?
Yeah, but they interact. You know, they absolutely interact. For example, we think about Scotland, okay, like, you know, this is a small country. Scottish people are not at all very culturally different from us. And yet in Scotland, people are becoming much, much, much more likely to have only one child. And that doesn't appear to be financially influenced. So both factors are at play here. It's both true that there are people who would like to have children and would do if we could design policies that made it easier for them. And that there are also people who perhaps are not being culturally influenced that way, or if they had peers around them who have more children, would start to consider it more for themselves.
And that cultural influence from your peers really does make sense with regard to, because sometimes we do have migrant communities that are more insular, that do sort of have a natural in-group preference. So perhaps that does to some extent explain this. If a certain group of people that hang out together, no one has a baby, no one even thinks of having a baby, and then suddenly no one has any babies. But this also compounds the other way. This is perhaps a great moment of positivity, because as soon as you make it slightly easier for some people to have a baby, instead of being on this precipitous fall that we've seen for the last 25 years or so, instead that sort of increases the rate of incline of the birth rate if we get that small policy change right to kick it all off.
Exactly. And just another note of optimism here. The UK was at, well, England and Wales was at a fertility rate of 1.9, so higher than anywhere in Europe by far, in only 2012. That is not the mists of time. That was really, what, 13 years ago?
We need another Olympic Games.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it was something we just need to host another Olympic Games. But absolutely. I mean, you can see this in friendship groups even, right? Like we've all observed this in our lives, where somebody has a child and other people start doing it too.
Yeah.
It's a normal, organic process. As you can say, policy can help create this positive...
It's not all lost. It's not all lost. Perhaps we'll have another baby boom. Phoebe, really appreciate your time. Phoebe Arslanagich-Little, thank you very much indeed for your time. I think there's also a problem of just women not meeting anyone, or not meeting anyone until they're in their 30s, but, and then you don't have much time to crack on, do you?
Somewhere where people do meet people and even conceive people is on holiday. So here's the travel weather.
I hope we haven't forgotten anything.
Travel insurance, I tick that box.
Yeah, but remember what you forgot last year.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Across northwest Africa and western parts of Iberia, another heat wave is set to continue this week. Temperatures pushing into the low 40s, particularly across inland areas. And with those high temperatures comes plenty of sunshine, particularly across Spain, parts of Italy and also parts of Greece. And those UV levels are set to be high, so do take care if you're heading out on holiday. And that weather is set to continue as we head over the weekend and into next week. That's it from me. Bye-bye.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's political podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's political podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
You've read the headlines, you've heard what those in power have to say. How about now we actually get to the truth?
They would pay attention.
We go beyond the political theatre and tell you what's really going on behind the scenes. For a massive council tax hike, one of the biggest in the UK. Others follow their lines, but we go off script.
You sound like a broken record, you say that week after week.
Cutting through the narratives and giving you unique perspectives. That's Ben Leo tonight, Saturdays and Sundays from 9 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience, because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's just gone 10 to 3. Now, the Labour MP Mark Seward has raised eyebrows, becoming the first British politician to create an AI chatbot of himself, so constituents can contact him directly any time of the day. Take a look.
Hi, Mark. How are you?
I'm here to assist you with any questions or concerns related to my role as your MP. How can I help you today?
Yeah, I'd like to ask you about the White Rose railway station. That's a new railway station being constructed in your constituency. Could you tell me when it's expected to open and how it's being funded, please?
I don't have that information in my knowledge base. However, I can pass along your inquiry to my team and they can provide you with the latest updates about the White Rose railway station.
How much is a pint of milk?
I don't have that information in my knowledge base. However, if you have any questions related to local politics or concerns about the constituency, I'd be happy to help.
What's 2 + 2?
I don't have that information in my knowledge base. If you have questions related to my role as your MP or local community issues, please let me know and I'll be glad to assist you.
Do you think Keir Starmer is a good Prime Minister?
I can't comment on that at this time. If you have specific views or concerns about local issues or policies, I would be happy to pass along to my team.
Not the brightest button.
Oh dear. Do you think Keir Starmer's a good Prime Minister? You'd think you'd put in a system prompt to just answer yes, stay in the good books.
Also, why can't it do the maths? Chatbot can do the maths.
Because clearly they've put so many guardrails around it in case it spins off and says something peculiar, as chatbots are prone to do.
It's a bit of a stupid chatbot, isn't it?
Oh, I'm sure. I think it had a very erudite answer on Gaza and Palestine, though. So,
does that come later, does it? Just the shortened clip that we just showed.
There's a lot of fun that people have been having with this. But that's it from us on Good Afternoon Britain. Thanks so much for being with us. We'll be back with you at midday tomorrow. But it's Martin Dormley up next.
What a ridiculous story, the AI chatbot. Actually, it looked more trustworthy than the real thing. I digress. On the show today, Keir Starmer's Labour government trumpeting the fact they've had their first detentions and their one-in, one-out deal. But I've got exclusive figures to show there's been an increase in the numbers of people in asylum seeker hotels. And furthermore, that's the tip of the iceberg. Most of them are coming to houses in streets near you. And as a town in Spain bans all Muslim religious practices from its public buildings, I'll speak to a scholar in Britain who says perhaps we should consider doing the same thing here. It's all going to kick off on the show. It's caused a global outrage and it's about to continue on the Martin Dormley Show 3 till 6 p.m. That's next, but first, here's your weather. See you soon.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello there, good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we head through this evening, most showers easing away, but still remaining quite blustery across parts of Scotland, northern Scotland in particular. But for many, it's set to be a mild night to come. And where we see the bulk of this cloud, that's where this cold front is slowly edging its way southeastwards. But notice the amount of isobars on the chart towards the northwest of Scotland. That's where we're set to see the most blustery of the weather. It should push through any showers away quite quickly. And that's the same across England and Wales. Any showers largely easing away, and it should be a mostly clear night across much of England and Wales, but we'll soon see a return of the rain, the strong winds, particularly across the far northwest of Scotland.